wife cheated on me with her finance mentor, told everyone I was jealous of her success, and then lost every single dollar she had when the whole thing turned out to be a scam. Meanwhile, I'm the idiot who taught himself investing from YouTube videos for free and actually made money. Funny how that works, right? So here's the situation. My wife got obsessed with getting rich quick, started sleeping with some smooth-talking guy from a financial seminar, drained over $100,000 into what turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, and then had the audacity to show up at my door asking me to take her back after the guy fled the country with her money. I'm 39 male. My wife, ex-wife now, is Anna. She's 36. The so-called mentor she was sleeping with, that's Dee. And then there's Gloria, Anna's mom, 62, sweetest woman alive, who tried her best to fix what her daughter burned to the ground. Let me take you back to where this all started. Anna and I had been married for 7 years. For 6 of those years, she was the most grounded person I knew. She clipped coupons. She kept a spreadsheet for groceries. She once returned a lamp because she found it $11 cheaper at another store. That was the woman I married. The shift started with a podcast. She found some finance influencer, I never even learned the guy's real name, who ran this whole ecosystem of content. Podcasts, YouTube lives, Instagram reels, weekend seminars. His whole pitch was that ordinary people were leaving generational wealth on the table because they were too scared to invest aggressively. He talked fast, wore tailored suits, and had this way of making you feel stupid for keeping money in a savings account. Anna devoured it. Every episode. Every clip. She started using phrases like asset allocation and leveraged positions and high-yield alternative vehicles at dinner. And honestly, at first I thought it was great. My wife wants to learn about money. Fantastic. I didn't know much about investing myself. I'd always been a save what you can, don't touch the 401k kind of guy. Boring. Predictable. But it kept us stable. Then came the seminar. It was a Saturday workshop downtown, $200 a ticket. Anna came home glowing. Not just excited times, glowing asterisk. She talked for 45 minutes straight about the speakers, the energy in the room, the community of high performers she connected with. And then she mentioned Dee. He's one of the senior mentors, she said, barely looking at me while she scrolled through her phone. He personally manages a portfolio worth millions. He said I have real instinct. I smiled. That's great, babe. That was my first mistake. Not the smile, the not asking questions. Over the next 2 months, Dee became a recurring character in every conversation. Dee said this about crypto. Dee thinks index funds are for people who've given up. Dee has a private investment circle, very exclusive, only for people he personally selects. Anna started attending weekly mentorship sessions, then bi-weekly. Then she was going to Dee's office, some co-working space downtown, on random Tuesday nights. I noticed the wardrobe changes before anything else. Anna had always dressed well, but practically. Suddenly she was buying things I'd never seen her wear. Tighter dresses, heels for a Tuesday, perfume that wasn't the vanilla one she'd worn since college. She started doing her makeup differently, sharper, more deliberate for what she called networking events. My stomach knew before my brain did. Then the money conversation started. I'm going to pause my half of the mortgage this month, she told me, one evening, casual as ordering takeout. I set my fork down. Pause it. Dee says liquidity is everything right now. There's a window opening in the next 6 weeks, and I need capital positioned. I'll double it back easy. Anna, that's our mortgage, and I'll cover 2 months when the return hits. You don't understand how this works. That became her favorite sentence. Asterisk, you don't understand how this works. Asterisk. She said it when I questioned the $5,000 wire transfer. She said it when I found a receipt for a $3,200 advanced mentorship package. She said it when she pulled $40,000 from her personal savings money she'd been building since before we met and moved it into an account I had no access to. You've never taken a single risk in your life, she said one night when I pressed too hard. That's why we're still living like this. She gestured around our apartment. The apartment I loved. The apartment we'd painted together. I stopped arguing. Not because she convinced me. Because something behind her eyes had gone cold and I realized I wasn't talking to my wife anymore. I was talking to someone who'd already decided I was the obstacle. The late nights got later. She started silencing her phone around me. She'd come home smelling like a restaurant we couldn't afford wine on her breath and go straight to the shower. I did what I told myself I'd never do. I checked her location one night when she said she was at a portfolio review session. She was at a cafe in Midtown. So I drove there. I parked across the street. Through the window, I could see them at a corner table. Dee was older than I expected, mid-40s, silver at the temples, expensive watch catching the light. His hand was on Anna's thigh. Not resting. Moving. She was leaning into him, laughing with her whole body, her fingers tracing circles on his forearm. I sat in that car for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock so I wouldn't scream. When she came home that night, I was sitting in the dark living room. She jumped when she saw me. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" "About Dee's hand on your leg at that cafe tonight." The color drained from her face for exactly 3 seconds. Then something rearranged behind her eyes, and she straightened her spine. "Fine," she said. "Yes. I slept with him. But you need to understand it's not what you think." "Explain to me what it is then." "It's transactional." Dee doesn't mentor just anyone. There's a closeness required, an intimacy. It's how he operates. And what I'm getting in return is worth. You're telling me you traded sex for financial advice. I'm telling you I made a times investment asterisk. I stared at her. She didn't blink. She packed her things that weekend. No tears, no apology. She told me she'd been outgrowing this marriage for years and that I'd thank her eventually. She told her friends. She told her coworkers. She told times Gloria, times her own mother, that I was jealous of her progress. She labeled me as controlling, jealous, and whatnot. I listened with a clenched jaw and said nothing. Because what do you say to someone rewriting history in real time? The divorce was brutal, but mercifully clean. She didn't contest anything because Dee had apparently told her lawyers were a waste of capital. The joint account was closed and the money was split between us. We have no children, so there was no question of child support. Thank God we don't have children. It would have made the situation so complex. She'd been telling everyone that I would go back to her begging for reconciliation when she becomes rich after learning the personal finance ropes. I said good luck. For 3 months I heard nothing. Just silence and secondhand reports that Anna was thriving and building an empire. Then one morning I opened the news on my phone and saw Dee's face staring back at me right next to the words asterisk asterisk FBI, asterisk 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 asterisk, fraud asterisk asterisk and asterisk asterisk, fled the country asterisk asterisk. The article was clinical in its details. The finance influencer, the one whose name I never bothered to learn, had been running a Ponzi-style operation for nearly 4 years. Hundreds of victims across 12 states. The high-yield alternative vehicles were nothing. Empty accounts, shuffling money between shells. The senior mentors like Dee weren't financial advisors. They were recruiters. Salesmen. Their job was to identify marks, build trust, extract capital, and move on. Dee had been particularly effective. The article noted he'd cultivated intimate personal relationships with several female investors to deepen financial commitment. They used that exact phrase. Asterisk. Cultivated intimate personal relationships. Asterisk. Like he was tending a garden. The influencer had fled to Dubai. Dee had gone to Cyprus. Between them, they'd disappeared with somewhere north of $14 million in other people's money. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then I did something I didn't expect. I laughed. Not a happy laugh, not a vindictive one. Just the involuntary sound your body makes when reality lands so precisely on the spot you feared it would that it almost feels scripted. Within a week, the secondhand reports changed tone. Anna hadn't just lost the $40,000 from her savings. She'd gone deeper, much deeper. Somewhere in those months of thriving and building an empire, she'd liquidated everything. Her full savings, over $100,000, accumulated across 15 years of coupon clipping and spreadsheet keeping. Her retirement account, and the thing that made my chest physically hurt when I heard it, her grandmother's jewelry. Pieces Gloria had passed down, a ruby brooch from the 1940s, a pearl set that survived immigration and 2 wars. Anna had sold them to a jeweler downtown and wired the cash directly into one of Dee's shell accounts. Gone. All of it. The people she'd bragged to coworkers, friends, the Instagram followers she'd accumulated during her wealth journey, they turned on her with the same energy she'd used on me. Screenshots of her old posts circulated, the ones where she'd mocked people with savings accounts, the ones where she'd called 9-to-5 workers voluntarily poor. Someone even dug up a story she'd posted about me without naming me, calling her ex-husband a man terrified of his own potential. Now every comment section had the same punchline, and it was her. I didn't participate, I didn't share anything, I didn't even read most of it. But I'd be lying if I said I felt nothing. I felt everything. Anger, grief, a sick satisfaction I'm not proud of, and underneath all of it, a sadness so heavy it sat in my ribs like wet concrete. Because the woman who lost everything was still the woman who'd once driven 40 minutes to bring me soup when I had the flu. People aren't one thing. That's what makes betrayal so disorienting. She showed up at my door on a Thursday evening. No makeup, hair unwashed. Wearing a sweatshirt I recognized from our closet, she must have taken it when she packed. Can I come in? Please. 5 minutes. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. She looked like she'd dropped 15 pounds in the wrong way. Her eyes were swollen. Her hands wouldn't stay still. I know what you're thinking, she started. I doubt it. D used me. Everything he told me was a lie. The mentorship, the returns, she stopped. Swallowed. The relationship? There was no relationship. He used me to get my money. That proves there was nothing real between us. Which means what, Anna? Which means it wasn't really cheating. Not in the way you think. I was manipulated. I let that sentence hang in the air between us. She watched my face, searching for a crack. You told me it was transactional, I said quietly. You told me you made it a times investment. Asterisk, those were your words. You weren't confused. You were proud. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I'm sorry about your money, I said. Genuinely. But you need to leave. She cried on my porch for a few minutes after I went inside. I stood behind the door and listened. Then she left. Gloria called me 2 weeks later, asked if we could meet for coffee. I almost said no. But Gloria had never been anything but kind to me even during the divorce, even when Anna was painting me as the villain. She'd sent me a card that simply said, times, I'm sorry. You deserved better. Asterisk. So I went. She looked older than 62. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. She's not eating, Gloria said. She won't leave the apartment. I found her looking up Dee's name for 4 hours straight last Tuesday, like she could will him back into the country. I'm sorry, Gloria. She made a terrible mistake. Many terrible mistakes. But she's my daughter, and she's drowning. I understand. Could you just talk to her? You don't have to take her back. Just let her know she's not Gloria. I put my hand on hers. I love you. You were the best mother-in-law I could have asked for. But I can't be Anna's life raft. Not after what she did. Not after how she did it. Her eyes filled. She nodded slowly like she'd known the answer before she asked. Take care of yourself, she whispered. You too. The months after that were the quietest of my life. And the most productive, I started walking, then running. I dropped 26 pounds by winter. I pulled my old easel out of storage and started painting again. Terrible at first, then less terrible, then something I actually looked forward to each evening. And the investing. The thing Anna mocked me for not understanding. I started learning. Not from a guru, not from a seminar. From free YouTube channels run by CPAs and certified financial planners who gave away the same information Dee charged thousands for. I opened a brokerage account with $500. I read, I watched, I made small, boring, disciplined moves. Index funds, dividend stocks, dollar cost averaging, the stuff Anna called giving up. Within 8 months, my portfolio was up 14%. Not millions, not an empire, but real, mine, built on nothing but patience and free information. I still think about Anna sometimes, not with hatred, not even with satisfaction. Just with the strange heavy clarity of watching someone burn down their own house and knowing you couldn't have stopped them even if you tried. She wanted a shortcut to wealth and lost everything. I took the long road and found something she never looked for, the quiet, unglamorous version of enough. My mother got dressed up, looked me dead in the eye, and told me she wasn't going anywhere. 15 minutes later, I watched her load my stepdad and my siblings into the truck, laughing, and drive off to Dave & Buster's without me. The look she gave me when she saw me standing outside wasn't guilt, it was disgust. So I quietly enlisted in the army, moved my entire life out of her house piece by piece without her noticing, and left a letter detailing every single time she erased me from my own family. She still doesn't know where I am. I'm 19. My mom is Denise. My stepdad is Rick. My bio dad, Matthew, just got out of prison 2 weeks ago and wants to play father for the first time in my life. My little sister Lily is 10, and she's the only person in that house who ever noticed I was missing. My best friend Kayla is the one who helped me disappear. And this is how I finally stopped being invisible. The thing people don't understand about being invisible is that it doesn't happen all at once. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides you don't exist. It's slower than that. It's 1,000 tiny cuts dressed up as normal life until one day you realize you've been bleeding out in a house full of people who never once asked why you look pale. Denise had me at 17. I know this because she reminded me constantly, not with words, but with the way her jaw tightened whenever someone at a school event asked how old she was when she had her first. I was the math that didn't add up to the life she wanted. Rick came along when I was 6. Married her when I was 8. Lily arrived when I was 9, and suddenly there was a version of family that made sense to Denise. A husband with a steady paycheck, a daughter with his last name, a house in a cul-de-sac with a 2-car garage. Then the little brother 4 years ago. The picture was complete. I was the rough draft she never deleted but stopped reading. It started with small things. Family photos where I was told to hold the camera. Dinners where my plate wasn't set until I walked into the kitchen, and Denise would say, "Oh, grab yourself one." Vacations planned for 4. Rick never said a word. That was his whole thing. He wasn't mean to me. He just wasn't anything times to me. He'd look at me the way you look at furniture that came with the house, acknowledged, tolerated, never chosen. The Dave & Buster's night was June 10th. I remember because I'd been tracking days on my phone calendar, marking every time they did something without me. Not because I was building a case. Because I needed proof I wasn't crazy. June 10th. Denise walked into my room, wearing that denim jacket she only pulls out for occasions. Full makeup, hair curled. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through job listings on Kayla's old laptop. "You look nice," I said. "Where are you going?" She didn't even pause. Nowhere. Just felt like getting ready. I nodded. She left. 15 minutes later, I heard the garage door grind open and something in my chest told me to get up. I walked to the front window first, then outside, and there they were. Rick buckling the little brother into his car seat. Lily climbing into the back with her light-up sneakers. Denise tossing her purse into the passenger side. They were laughing about something. All 4 of them. The truck was running and the evening light hit them like a photograph somebody would frame. Then Denise saw me. I was standing on the front step barefoot, and the look she gave me, I've replayed it 100 times. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't guilt. Her upper lip curled slightly and her eyes went flat like I was a stain on the driveway she'd have to pressure wash later. She got in the truck and closed the door. Rick backed out without glancing my direction. When they came home 3 hours later, I was in my room with the lights off. Lily burst in first because Lily always burst in first. We went to Dave & Buster's, I got the highest score in the basketball game, and then we got milkshakes and Mom let me pick out new shoes at the mall. She was bouncing. She was happy. I smiled at her because that's what you do when a 10-year-old, she was 9 then, is radiating pure joy. You don't poison it with your own damage. "That sounds awesome, Lil." Denise appeared in the doorway behind her. "It was just the park," she said, flat. Corrective, looking at me like she dared me to contradict her. I held her gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Then I looked at Lily, whose face had already shifted into confusion because even a 9-year-old knows when 2 truths are fighting. "Glad you had fun," I said. "I'm going to get some sleep." I closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed. I pressed my palms into my eyes until I saw white, and I made a sound I'd never made before, something between a laugh and a fracture. I didn't cry. I was past crying. Something structural had just given way, the load-bearing wall between times maybe she doesn't realize times and times she knows exactly what she's doing. Asterisk. The next morning I called Kayla. "I need to get out." "Okay," she said. "No questions." "That's Kayla. My grandpa's been asking about you. He says the Army's recruiting hard right now. Her grandfather served 22 years. He told me once over burnt burgers at a 4th of July cookout that the Army was the first place anyone ever expected him to show up. They count you," he'd said. "Every morning they count you." I went to the recruiting office on June 14th. Scored well on the ASVAB. Signed papers that Denise didn't know existed. Then I started moving out. 1 box at a time. A duffel bag here, a backpack there. Kayla's garage became a storage unit. When Denise noticed my shelf looking thin, I shrugged. Sold some stuff for cash. She didn't follow up. Of course she didn't. And then Matthew called. 2 weeks out of prison, voice shaking, asking if I'd meet him. I almost said no. But something about standing in a half-empty room in a house that was never mine made me say, "Fine." Saturday. He cried the moment he saw me. I didn't call him Dad. He has to earn it. So I started calling him by his first name, Matthew. Yes, that's his real name. I could see it in his eyes when I called him by his first name that he was hurt by it. But he accepted the fact that he wasn't there for me growing up. And these are the consequences. "I'll give you a chance," I told him. 1. Don't waste it. He nodded, tears running into his beard, and for the first time in my life, a parent was crying times for times me. June 23rd. Everything I owned was out of Denise's house. My room looked the same if you didn't open drawers. The letter was written 4 pages, front and back, every exclusion cataloged in black ink. Tomorrow was June 24th. Tomorrow I was gone. But first I had to say goodbye to Lily. The night of June 23rd, I sat on Lily's bedroom floor while she showed me a bracelet she'd made at day camp. Purple and white beads slightly lopsided with a plastic letter L dangling from the clasp. Her birthday was that weekend. She was turning 10. I'd already hidden her gift in Kayla's garage, a sketchbook, and a set of those markers she'd been eyeing at Target for months. I'd have to figure out how to get it to her. "You're being weird," she said. "I'm always weird. Weirder than normal weird." She tilted her head. She did that thing where she studied my face like she was reading a book with missing pages. 10 years old and already more perceptive than every adult in this house combined. I pulled my knees up. "Lil, I got a job. A real one. And it means I'm going to be moving out." Her hand stopped threading beads. The silence in her room was different from the silence in mine. Hers was full of color, fairy lights, drawings taped to the walls, a stuffed elephant named Gerald she'd never admit she still slept with. Mine was full of absence. Moving out where? Somewhere good. Somewhere I need to be. Her bottom lip did that thing. That tremor she fights because she's decided 10 is too old for crying. She lost the fight. "Are you going to come visit us?" Asterisk. Us. Asterisk. Not me. Us. She included the little brother who was asleep down the hall and wouldn't remember any of this. She was already carrying people the way I'd been carrying people my whole life. "Yes," I said. "When I have the time, I will. Promise. Promise." She crawled into my lap like she was 6 again, and I held her, and I memorized the weight of her because I didn't know when I'd feel it next. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and the chlorine from the neighborhood pool. My little brother was still too young to understand any of this. He'd wake up tomorrow and my door would be open and my bed would be made and he'd wander in looking for me the way he sometimes did, holding a dinosaur, wanting me to make it roar. Someone would redirect him. He'd forget. Kids that age are built to forget. I wasn't built that way. June 24th. I woke at 5:40 a.m. without an alarm. The house was silent in that thick, early morning way where even the air conditioner sounds like it's holding its breath. I got dressed in the bathroom. Jeans. A plain black shirt. Sneakers I'd already broken in because Kayla's grandfather told me never to show up to anything important in new shoes. The letter was in my back pocket, folded into a square, so tight the creases had turned white. I walked through the house one last time. The kitchen, where my plate was never set. The living room where the family photos lived, Rick and Denise's wedding, Lily's first birthday, the little brother's hospital portrait. I was in exactly one frame, a school photo from 5th grade hung in the hallway near the bathroom where guests wouldn't linger. I left it there, let it haunt the wall. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter and leaned against the sugar jar where Denise would find it when she made her coffee. 4 pages, front and back. Every exclusion cataloged in black ink. The Dave and Buster's night. The vacations for 4. The plate I had to grab myself. The look on the driveway, that lip curl, those flat eyes. I didn't write it to hurt her. I wrote it because I needed one honest record that I existed in this house and what it cost me. I did not mention the army. She didn't earn that information. I stepped outside. The Uber was already waiting at the curb. Matthew had paid for it. His first act of fatherhood that cost him something, even if it was only $12.40. I checked the estimate the night before. I'd let him. The cul-de-sac was quiet. Sprinklers ticking across lawns. Rick's truck in the driveway, dew on the windshield. A house that looked from the outside like every house that makes people say times, "What a nice family." Asterisk. I got in the car. The driver asked if I was heading to the bus station. I said yes. He asked if I was traveling far. I said far enough. Basic training started 4 days later. I'll skip the details because everyone's heard the stories, the yelling, the running, the sleep deprivation. What nobody tells you is the roll call. Every morning someone reads your name off a list, and you answer. And they mark you present. And if you don't answer, people come looking. The first time the drill sergeant called my name, my full legal name, loud enough to bounce off concrete, my throat locked. Not because I was scared, because it was the first time an institution had times required, times my existence. Not tolerated it. Not overlooked it, required it. I don't know if Denise has read the letter. I'm not there to see a reaction. For the first time in 19 years, that's not my problem to solve. Matthew calls every Sunday. I still call him Matthew. He still flinches slightly when I say it. But he accepted the fact that he wasn't there for me growing up, and these are the consequences. I told him I'd give him an opportunity to redeem himself. Let's see if he really is sorry and regrets not being there for me. He's on probation with the state, and with me. Lily turned 10 this past weekend. I sent the sketchbook and markers through Kayla. She sent me a photo of Lily holding them up, grinning so wide her eyes disappeared. She'd made me another bracelet, purple and white. This time the letter dangling from it was an L. It was mine. I keep it in my locker. Every morning after roll call, I see it. And I think about a house in a cul-de-sac where nobody counts heads and a barracks where they count every single one. They count you. every morning they count you. I got uninvited from my brother's wedding for being bisexual, and somehow I'm the one who ruined it from my couch in my pajamas cuddling my boyfriend. Here's what happened. My brother Marcus asked me not to come to his own wedding because his fiancée Diane's ultra-religious family might cause a scene if I brought my boyfriend. I accepted it. Didn't fight, didn't cry, just stayed home. Then my parents texted asking where I was. I told them the truth, and that single honest reply detonated a family war that ended in harassment legal charges and a brother I no longer recognize. So let me set the stage. I'm a guy in my mid-20s, bisexual, and honestly way too used to being treated like a problem. My boyfriend is Ethan. My brother is Marcus, married to Diane, whose father Gerald is the kind of man who thinks God handed him a personal vendetta. My mom is Linda. My dad is Robert. And then there's Natalie, Diane's closeted half-sister who nobody saw coming. Marcus and I used to share a bed when thunderstorms knocked the power out. He'd throw his arm over me and say, "Nothing gets past me, little man." He was 4 years older and built like he believed it. I grew up thinking my brother was a wall between me and anything that could hurt me. That wall came down on a Tuesday in March, 8 weeks before the wedding. We were at a diner, his idea neutral ground, which should have been my first clue. He ordered coffee and didn't touch it. Kept turning the mug in circles on the table handle at 12 o'clock, then 3, then 6. "So here's the thing," he said. "Diane's parents are. You know how they are. Conservative. Yeah." He cleared his throat. "And Diane and I talked about it, and we think it might just be easier if you came solo. Without Ethan." I remember the specific feeling, not a stab, not a punch, but a slow leak. Like someone had opened a valve somewhere in my chest and something warm was draining out. Or, Marcus continued, and the mug handle hit 9 o'clock. "If that's uncomfortable for you, maybe you could just sit this one out. Sit this one out." Like it was a pickup basketball game. I said, "Okay." That's the part people can't understand. They read this and think I should have flipped the table, made a speech, drawn a line. But here's the thing about being bisexual for 25 years. In a world that keeps handing you little cuts, you develop this numbness. A callous over the place where outrage should live. Ethan and I had been together 3 years by then, and the things that had happened in those 3 years, the comments from coworkers, the jokes from extended family, the way certain friends just evaporated it all, built this reflex. Someone pushes you out, you step back. You make it easy for them. You tell yourself it's not worth the fight because the fight never changes anything. So I told Marcus it was fine. I told him I understood. His shoulders dropped about 3 inches with relief, and that small physical collapse told me everything about how much he'd been dreading this conversation. Not because he was ashamed of asking, but because he was afraid I'd make it difficult. He hugged me in the parking lot, held on a beat too long. I think some part of him knew he was doing something that couldn't be undone. The wedding was June 14th. Ethan and I spent that Saturday on the couch watching a terrible horror movie, the kind where you can see the boom mic in every other shot. He had his head on my chest. I was running my fingers through his hair. It was genuinely one of the most peaceful afternoons I'd had in months. Then, my phone buzzed. Asterisk, asterisk, Linda, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. "Honey, where are you? We're at the church, and I don't see you anywhere." Asterisk. My stomach dropped. Not because of the question, but because of what the question meant. Marcus hadn't told them. He'd cut me from the guest list and never bothered to explain my absence to our own parents. I stared at the screen for maybe 30 seconds. Ethan paused the movie. "You okay?" I typed back the truth. Not out of spite, not to cause damage. Just because I was tired, bone tired of carrying other people's secrets for them. Asterisk, asterisk, me, asterisk, 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 Marcus asked me not to come. Diane's family has a problem with me bringing Ethan. "It's fine, Mom. Enjoy the wedding." Asterisk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing for 45 minutes. I found out later what happened in those 45 minutes. My mother Linda stood up from her pew during the cocktail hour, walked directly to Marcus, and said in full earshot of the head table, "You told your brother he wasn't welcome at your wedding because of who he loves." Marcus tried to pull her aside. She wouldn't move. Robert stood up next. My quiet newspaper reading, never raises his voice father stood up and said, "Answer, your mother's son." 2 factions formed in under a minute. Linda and Robert on one side, Gerald, Diane's father, on the other, already red-faced, already loud, already saying something about lifestyle choices and the sanctity of this ceremony. Diane was crying. Marcus was trying to hold the middle arms out like a traffic cop, and the whole thing nearly went physical when Gerald shoved Robert's shoulder. My parents left. Half of Marcus's groomsmen followed. I know all this because Marcus showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m. that night, still in his tuxedo, tie yanked, loose veins visible in his neck. You times told times them. He didn't knock. He pounded. They asked where I was. I answered, "You could have said you were sick. You could have said times anything, asterisk. You could have told them the truth yourself, Marcus." He stared at me like I'd spoken a different language. Then he left for his honeymoon. That's when things escalated so much it's unbelievable. Within 48 hours, my Instagram was flooded. Ethan's too. Gerald's side of the family found every account we had. The messages were scripture wrapped around slurs, the kind of hate that dresses itself in holiness, asterisk, abomination. Repent. You destroyed a family, asterisk, dozens of them. Some from accounts with profile pictures of smiling grandmothers. I screenshotted everything and sent them to Marcus. His reply times, "Stop disturbing my honeymoon with this drama. You started it," asterisk. I sent more screenshots. He left me on red. Then Diane's father, Gerald, texted Marcus asking for my home address. And Marcus, my brother, the wall between me and anything that could hurt me, gave it to him. I found out about the address from Ethan. He was standing at the living room window with his phone in one hand, the other hand pressed flat against the glass like he was bracing for impact. "Someone just posted our street name in the comments of your brother's wedding photo," he said. His voice was steady, but his hand on the glass was white at the knuckles. I called Marcus. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Third time he picked up. "Did you give Gerald our address?" A pause. The sound of waves. He was on a beach somewhere. He said he wanted to send you a letter. To apologize. Marcus. Look at what his family's been sending us. Look at the screenshots I sent you. Does that sound like a man who wants to apologize? I think you're being paranoid. He posted our street name online. Another pause. Longer. Then I can't deal with this right now. I'm on my honeymoon. He hung up. I stood there holding a dead phone and felt something shift, not break, not crack, but times, shift times the way tectonic plates move. Quiet. Irreversible. The brother who used to throw his arm over me during thunderstorms had just handed my location to a man who called me an abomination. And his defense was that he was on vacation. Ethan and I packed bags that night and stayed with my parents. Linda was already in motion. She'd been in motion since the reception, apparently calling attorneys, documenting everything, building a file with the precision of someone who'd found a purpose that burned. I walked into my parents' kitchen at 7 a.m. and she had printouts spread across the table. Every message, every comment, every threat. Organized by date sender and severity. "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She didn't look up. "I should have done this years ago. I should have seen what was happening to you and I didn't, and that stops now." Robert was quieter about it. He always was. But that weekend I went into my old bedroom and found a bisexual pride flag, pink, purple, blue thumbtacked above the headboard. No note, no announcement. Just the flag hung, slightly crooked, because Robert has never been able to hang anything straight in his life. I stood in the doorway, staring at it, and something behind my sternum cracked open in a way that had nothing to do with pain. The legal process took 3 months. Linda filed harassment charges against Gerald and 4 members of Diane's extended family. The evidence was overwhelming, hundreds of messages, the doxing, a voicemail Gerald left on Ethan's phone at 2 a.m. calling us things I won't repeat here. But the moment that broke the case open was Natalie. Natalie was Diane's half-sister. 23. Quiet at family gatherings. The kind of person who always seemed to be standing slightly behind someone else. She reached out to me through a burner Instagram account, no profile picture, no followers created that same day. Asterisk, I have screenshots of my father coordinating the messages. Group chat, I can testify. Asterisk, I told her she didn't have to. I told her the risk. Asterisk, I know the risk. I'm like you. I've been hiding for 6 years. I'm tired of hiding. Asterisk, she testified. In doing so, she outed herself to every member of her family simultaneously. I watched her sit in that room with her hands folded on the table, voice clear, reading messages. Her own father had written messages about people like her, about people like Times, us Times, and her hands never shook. Not once. The case was won. financial penalties against Gerald and 3 others, restraining orders, the kind of legal consequences that don't undo damage but draw a line around it. Then came the sit-down. Linda arranged it, insisted on it. Marcus came to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon in October. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Linda had built her case file, and he looked smaller. Not physically, just reduced. Like someone had turned down his contrast. "I'm sorry," he said, "for the address, for not listening, for the wedding." The words were correct. Every single one. And every single one landed like a coin dropped on carpet technically. They're technically making contact, producing no sound at all. I looked at him, at this stranger wearing my brother's face. "I miss who you used to be," I said. His jaw tightened. He stared at the table. Then he stood up, put his hands in his pockets, and walked out the front door. No goodbye, no rebuttal. Just the click of the latch. Linda disinherited him the following week. That was 7 months ago. Marcus and I haven't spoken since. Ethan and I moved to a new apartment address, unknown to Marcus, unknown to Diane, unknown to Gerald. We adopted a cat named Thunderstorm, which Ethan thinks is funny, and I think is exactly right. My parents are different people now. Linda volunteers with a local LGBTQ organization. Robert still can't hang a flag straight, but he tries. They see me now, not the version of me that made things easy for everyone, but the actual me, the one who exists fully and loves who he loves. Natalie disappeared from contact after the case. Her burner account went dark. I don't know where she is. I think about her constantly, this woman who burned down her own shelter to light my way. I hope she's somewhere safe. I hope she's somewhere time seen, asterisk. The cruel math of all this settles on me sometimes, usually late at night, a wedding meant to join 2 families, permanently severed one. And the person blamed for it all was on a couch fingers in his boyfriend's hair watching a movie so bad you could see the boom mic. I never even made it to the church. My brother proposed to my fiancée. At a dinner he organized, in front of our entire family, with a ring and a rehearsed speech and everything, and the worst part, he didn't even want her. He dumped her over a year earlier because he got bored. So let me walk you through how a guy who ghosted a woman after 4 weeks of casual dating somehow convinced himself she was running a long-term revenge plot against him and decided the best way to prove it was to get down on one knee, in front of his own mother, and propose to his brother's fiancée. I'm 28 male. My fiancée is Jen, she's 26, and she's the most composed person I've ever met, which matters later. My brother Mark is 26, and his buddy Tyler is the genius who helped him cook up this whole scheme. My dad is Richard, my mom is Diane, and both of them watched this train wreck happen in real time. Let me start with the geography of it, because that's what makes the whole thing possible. I moved back to my hometown in January of last year after spending 4 years in Denver. Job fell through, lease was up, and my parents had a spare room they weren't using. Not my proudest chapter. I was 27 sleeping in my childhood bedroom, applying to jobs during the day, and hitting local bars at night just to feel like a functioning adult. Mark and I weren't close. We'd never been close really, 2 years apart, totally different wiring. He was the kind of guy who cycled through friend groups every 6 months and treated relationships like free trials he'd cancel before the charge hit. We'd barely spoken while I was in Denver. When I moved back, we existed in the same zip code the way satellites orbit the same planet technically near each other, functionally worlds apart. I met Jen in February at a place called The Lantern. She was there with 2 friends, and I was alone at the bar pretending to watch basketball. She asked if the seat next to me was taken. I said something embarrassingly basic like, "It is now." She laughed anyway. We talked for 3 hours. Not the performative first date kind of talking, the kind where you forget to check your phone, where the bartender has to ask twice if you want another round. She was finishing her master's in social work. She had this way of listening where she'd tilt her head slightly and narrow her eyes like she was running what you said through some internal fact checker before responding. I was gone by the end of that first conversation. Completely irreversibly gone. We dated through the spring. Took it slow. She met my parents in April, casual, low-key, a Sunday dinner where Diane made pot roast, and Richard asked Jen exactly 3 questions about her career before declaring her good people. My sisters loved her immediately. Mark wasn't there. Mark was never there for family stuff unless it involved a holiday or a free meal. By summer, I knew You hear people say that and it sounds like a greeting card, but I mean, it's structurally, I knew the way, a load-bearing wall from a decorative one. Jen was the architecture. Everything else was furniture. Then came Christmas. We were at my parents' house, full spread, the whole family packed into the living room after dinner. Someone, I think it was my sister, asked to see photos from a trip Jen and I had taken to the coast. I handed my phone over. It made the rounds. Ended up in Mark's hands. He was scrolling through half interested, and then he stopped. Looked up at Jen. Looked at me. His face did something I'd never seen before. This slow contortion like he was solving a math problem that personally offended him. Wait, he said. Your time's that, times, Jen. The room went quiet in that specific way. Rooms go quiet when someone's tone shifts from casual to dangerous. Jen's composure held. She looked at him steadily. We went out a few times last year, yeah. Mark set my phone down on the coffee table like it was contaminated. A few times. Right? He turned to me. You knew about this. I hadn't. Jen and I had talked about exes in the general sense. She'd mentioned a short thing that fizzled, no names, no details, because there were no details worth mentioning. 4 weeks of casual dating that he ended by simply stopping his replies. I didn't know it was you, I told him. Does it matter? Does it times matter? Times. He stood up. Richard's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. She's my ex, man. You dated for a month. So that makes it cool. You just, moving on my Mark. Richard's voice low and final. Sit down. He didn't sit down. He looked around the room like he was waiting for someone to validate his outrage. Nobody did. Diane stared at her plate. My sisters exchanged a glance that communicated entire paragraphs. Jen sat perfectly still beside me, her hand finding mine under the table, squeezing once. Mark left, slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the wreath. I proposed to Jen on her birthday in March. Rooftop of her favorite restaurant, just the two of us, no audience. She said yes before I finished the sentence. I called my parents that night, called my sisters, didn't call Mark. He found out anyway. Sent me a text that said, simply times, you're making a mistake. Asterisk, I didn't respond. Then he went quiet. Weeks of silence. No texts, no showing up at family dinners to make a scene, nothing. Diane mentioned he seemed calmer and suggested maybe he was coming around. I wanted to believe that. I really did. In June, Mark invited the whole family to dinner at his apartment. Said he wanted to make amends, start fresh, celebrate properly. Diane practically begged me to go. Richard said it was my call. Jen, steady as ever, said she'd follow my lead. So we went. His apartment was clean, suspiciously clean, like someone had coached him. Candles on the table, actual cloth napkins. Tyler was notably absent, which I took as a good sign at the time. The first 30 minutes were almost normal. Mark asked about the wedding, complimented Jen's dress. Poured wine for everyone. Diane was beaming. Richard kept one watchful eye on Mark but seemed to relax as the evening wore on. Then, between the main course and dessert, Mark stood up, tapped his glass with a fork. I want to say something, he announced. I've been thinking a lot about family, about what matters, about big moments and not letting them pass you by. He reached into his jacket pocket, and my stomach dropped through the floor. He pulled out a small velvet box, black, the kind you get at a mall kiosk, not a jeweler. Mark turned to face Jen. Jen, he said, and his voice had that rehearsed quality, that over-enunciated cadence of someone who'd practiced in a mirror. I know this is unconventional, but I've realized that what we had was something I threw away too quickly, and I can't let another man, even my own brother, build a life on a foundation that was always meant to be mine. He dropped to one knee. Diane's wine glass hit the table hard enough to slosh. Richard was already pushing his chair back. My sisters froze in perfect unison like someone had pressed pause on a movie. Will you... Stand up. Jen's voice cut through the room like a scalpel. Not loud, not shaking, surgical. Stand up right now. Mark blinked. The script in his head clearly hadn't included that line reading. He stayed on one knee, box still open, cheap cubic zirconia catching the candlelight. I was already moving. My chair tipped backward and I heard it hit the floor, but the sound was distant, muffled, like hearing something through water. Richard was coming around the table from the other side. I registered him in my peripheral vision, his hand already reaching for Mark's shoulder, but I got there first. I hit him. Open hand initially, then closed a punch that connected with his jaw and sent him sideways off his knee. The ring box skittered across the hardwood. Mark caught himself on the edge of the table, pulled the tablecloth, and a candle rolled into a water glass with a hiss. What is times wrong, times with you, I heard myself say, and my voice didn't sound like mine. Mark straightened up, touched his jaw, and then this is the part I replay most often, he times smiled asterisk. Not a pain smile, not a caught smile. A vindicated one. See, he pointed at Jen. See how she didn't even hesitate. She didn't even consider times it. Because this was never about me or you. This is about her getting back at me. She's been running a game since day one and you're too stupid to... Mark times enough, asterisk. Richard had him by the arm, now grip white-knuckled. We're leaving. Everyone is leaving. No, Dad, listen. She dated me first. Then just times happens. Times show up with my brother. Tyler saw it from the beginning. She's been... You staged this, I said. The realization landed like a delayed detonation. You cleaned your apartment. You invited everyone. You did all of this to what times? Test times her. He didn't deny it. His jaw was already swelling, and he didn't deny it. Diane was crying. My sisters were pulling Jen toward the door, forming a protective wall around her without anyone needing to coordinate it. Jen's face was completely still, but her hands were trembling. I saw that. I saw it, and something inside me locked permanently into place. We left. Richard drove. Nobody spoke for 11 minutes. I counted. 5 days later, at my apartment. Neutral ground, though. Nothing about it felt neutral. Mark sat on my couch like he was waiting at the DMV. Jen sat across from him in the armchair. I stood. Richard and Diane were in the kitchen, close enough to hear, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. Just explain it, I said. All of it? Mark leaned back, crossed his arms. And then, with the detached tone of someone recounting a mildly interesting documentary, he explained. He said he had no feelings for Jen. None. He and his friend thought it would be a good idea to test it and see if they were right, so he came up with the idea to propose and see if she dumped me for him. The whole dinner, the candles, the cloth napkins, Tyler's choreography, Mark's execution. Jen asked him to elaborate on why he thought she was hung up on him, and he told her that he heard she was asking about him following the breakup and still hanging out at the places they used to go to, so it was a valid assumption. Then for her to pop up randomly with his brother affirmed his suspicions. Jen told him she'd only asked about him once following the breakup, and she'd been hanging out at those places with friends before they started dating, and she wouldn't avoid them because of a breakup. She also told him she was offended at the idea that she would go as low as to pursue me just to get back at him. He shrugged. Actually shrugged. Like she'd told him the weather forecast. Okay, he said. Maybe I was wrong about that part. But you have to admit, the optics are weird. The times optics times, Jen repeated, and for the first time her composure cracked not into tears, but into a laugh. One short, disbelieving exhale. You proposed to your brother's fiancée in front of your entire family because of times optics. Asterisk. Mark shifted on the couch. Look, I'm sorry if it got out of hand. But I still can't support this wedding. It doesn't sit right with me. I'd been waiting for this part. I'd been composing this sentence for 5 days. You were already uninvited, Mark. I'm not asking for your support. I'm telling you we're done. He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. Like the concept of a consequence was genuinely novel to him. You're choosing her over your brother. I'm choosing the person who's never made me justify loving her. He left. No slam door this time. Just a quiet click that sounded more final than any explosion. That was 4 months ago. Mark and I haven't spoken. The silence isn't hostile, it's structural. Load-bearing even. My parents call us separately now. Diane still floats the occasional maybe with time suggestion, but her heart isn't in it. Richard told me privately that he's proud of me, and that was enough. My sisters were rocks. Our rocks. They helped Jen pick her dress last month. Jen and I are getting married in October. Small ceremony, people who showed up for us when it was ugly. No empty chairs reserved for people who might come around. Mark got exactly what he always gets. He got bored of Jen, then got bored of ignoring us, then got bored of his own conspiracy theory. Boredom was never his problem, though. I see that now. Boredom was just the word he used for the emptiness that sat where a personality should have been. He couldn't stand that Jen saw through it in 4 weeks and chose something real. Not because it was me specifically, but because it wasn't him. And that distinction will eat him alive longer than any punch I could throw. The wedding invitations went out last week. Tyler's address, notably, was not on the list. Neither was Mark's. My husband died 6 weeks before his secret walked up to my front door. A teenager. British accent. Holding a shoebox of photos that proved my husband had been flying across the ocean for years to play daddy to a child I never knew existed. So here's what happened. My husband Marcus passed in a workplace accident. I'm still drowning in grief when his 18-year-old son shows up claiming he's family, and half the internet is telling me it's a scam, while the other half is calling me a monster for not welcoming him with open arms. Meanwhile, my 8-year-old is sobbing because she wants her brother and I can barely look at this kid without seeing every lie my marriage was built on. I'm 32. Marcus was my husband. Callum is his son, the one he hid. My daughters are Amara, she's 12, and Zuri, she's 8. My sister Denise won't stop pushing me. And my mom Gloria is convinced we're being conned. Let me tell you about Marcus first, because you need to understand what I thought I had. Marcus grew up in foster care, bounced between 7 homes before he aged out at 18. He told me this on our 3rd date, sitting in a parking lot, eating cold fries, and he said it like he was reading a grocery list. No emotion. Just facts. Then he looked at me and said, I'm going to be the father I never had. That's the only thing I know for sure about myself. I married that man. I married that promise. When Amara was born, he cried so hard the nurses asked if he was okay. When Zuri came, he was the one who noticed something was different before any doctor did. He fought for her evaluations. He sat in every meeting. He learned every acronym. Marcus was not a perfect husband. He traveled too much for work. He shut down during arguments. He had this way of going somewhere behind his eyes where I couldn't reach him. But as a father, I would have bet my life on him. I did bet my life on him. Then he died on a Tuesday. Crane malfunction. They called me at 2:47 p.m. and I remember thinking the number was odd because Marcus always said odd numbers were lucky. I was still wearing his deodorant on my wrists because the grief counselor said familiar scents help. I was still sleeping on his side of the bed. I was still answering his phone when it rang, listening to his voicemails from coworkers who didn't know yet, letting them talk to a dead man. 6 weeks into that. 6 weeks of holding my daughters together with hands I couldn't feel. That's when the doorbell rang. Callum was tall, taller than Marcus. He had Marcus's exact jawline and these light brown eyes that didn't match, but somehow still looked like him. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down like he'd slept in it on the plane. He was shaking. I'm sorry, he said. British accent soft. I'm so sorry. I know this is... I didn't know how my mom passed last year, and Marcus was... He was all I closed the door in his face. Not slammed. Closed. Quietly. Like if I did it gently enough, it wouldn't be real. He left the shoebox on the porch. I opened it at midnight. Photos. Marcus holding a baby in what looked like a London flat. Marcus at a school play sitting in the back row. Marcus pushing a boy on a swing. The boy maybe 7, grinning with missing teeth. Birthday cards in Marcus's handwriting. A boarding school newsletter with Callum Whitfield circled in the honor roll. A photo from maybe 2 years ago, Marcus and a teenage Callum standing outside a pub, Marcus's arm around his shoulder, both of them squinting into the sun. Years. He'd been going for years. Every work trip reshuffled in my mind like a deck of cards being cut. Every time he said conference in London or client meeting in Manchester, I sat on my kitchen floor with those photos spread around me, and I felt my marriage die a second death. This one, slower and uglier than the first. Callum came back 3 days later. This time Denise was with me. Let him talk, Denise said. I don't owe him anything. Nobody said you did. But those girls heard the doorbell last time, and Amara's already Googling, so I let him in. He sat on the edge of my couch like it might burn him. He explained. His mother raised him in London. She and Marcus were never together, a brief relationship. When Marcus was 21 before me, before any of this, she got sick. Marcus started visiting more. When she died, Callum was 17, and Marcus helped him get into university. Then Marcus died, and Callum had no one. I'm not asking for money, he said. He talked about Amara and Zuri. He showed me pictures. I know this is mental. I know you probably hate me. I didn't hate him. I hated what he represented. But I couldn't separate the two yet. Gloria was the one who said it first. Baby, how do we even know this is real? People run scams like this. Man dies suddenly, someone shows up wanting a piece. It landed in my chest like a key finding a lock. A scam. Of course, that was easier. That was survivable. I posted online asking for advice, and the responses split me in half. Half said Times get a DNA test immediately, this is textbook fraud. Asterisk. The other half said Times that boy lost his father too. You're punishing a child for a grown man's choices. Asterisk. I let Denise supervise 2 visits. Controlled, 1 hour each. Zuri attached to Callum like a magnet, this child who struggles with every new person, every transition, every social cue. She climbed onto the couch next to him and started showing him her rock collection. He sat there for 40 minutes asking about every single rock. Amara stayed in her room both times. After the second visit, I told Callum not to come back. Zuri screamed. Not a tantrum, a sound I'd never heard from her. Guttural. She hit the floor and she screamed like something had been torn out of her. He's my brother. Daddy gave me a brother, and you're taking him. I stood in my hallway watching my 8-year-old shatter, and I thought, times, I am doing the right thing. I am protecting my family. Asterisk. Denise called that night. You need to hear yourself because you sound exactly like Gloria right now. Don't. That boy flew across an ocean. We are not in a place to give anything emotionally or financially, so I recoiled from him. That doesn't make me a monster. Nobody called you a monster. But pushing him away doesn't make him a threat either. I hung up. 2 weeks of silence. Amara started weekly therapy sessions. I tried to get Zuri in too, but she hated it, so I pulled her out for now. The house felt like a held breath. Then the DNA results came back, and Marcus's last lie fell apart. The results were 99.98%. I read the number 4 times, like the decimals might rearrange themselves into something I could argue with. Marcus's son. Marcus's actual biological undeniable son. I sat with the paper on the same kitchen floor where I'd spread those photos weeks before, and I waited for the rage. It came, but not at Callum. It came for the man I'd buried. The man who sat in IEP meetings advocating for his daughter's right to accommodation while his other child ate Christmas dinner alone at boarding school. The man who cried when Amara was born because fatherhood meant times everything, times to him while a boy in London already knew the shape of his absence. I called Denise. It's real. Silence. Then, okay. So what now? I don't know. Yes, you do. I let Denise arrange a visit. Saturday noon, the park near the library. Neutral ground. She'd supervise. I wouldn't be there. That was the deal. Then Saturday morning, Denise called with a stomach bug so violent I could hear it through the phone. Reschedule, I said immediately. He's already on the train. He took a bus to the train station at 6 a.m. Then he can take a train back. You call that girl and tell her the brother she screamed for isn't coming because you couldn't sit on a bench for 2 hours. I couldn't. I physically could not make Zuri hear that again. So I went. Callum was already there when we pulled up. He was sitting on a bench with his hands between his knees, and when he saw my car, he stood up so fast he knocked his water bottle off the seat. He looked at me the way you'd look at a dog you weren't sure about. Cautious. Ready to be still. He was scared of me. That hit somewhere I wasn't prepared for. Callum Zuri was out of the car before I'd fully stopped running across the grass with her rock bag bouncing against her hip. He crouched down, and she crashed into him already, talking about a geode she'd cracked open. About a show she'd watched about how she'd saved him the best quartz, because the white ones are common, but this one had a pink vein. Through it. C times. C asterisk. He looked at the rock like she'd handed him something holy. Amara stayed by me. Arms crossed. She watched her sister and this stranger brother with an expression I recognized because I'd been wearing it for weeks, the face of someone calculating how much more loss they can afford. You don't have to go over there, I said. I know. We sat on a bench 30 feet away. I pretended to look at my phone. Amara pretended to read. We were both watching Callum teach Zuri how to skip stones in the creek, his throws exaggerated and terrible on purpose so she'd laugh. He has Dad's arm thing, Amara said quietly. What? When he throws? That hitch? Dad did that. I looked. She was right. The same slight pause at the top of the arc, like the arm was asking permission from the shoulder. Genetic. Inherited. A dead man's motion living in a stranger's body. Amara's jaw tightened. She went back to her book. But 10 minutes later, she was standing at the creek's edge, not participating, just times closer times, and Callum didn't push. He didn't even acknowledge her approach. He just kept skipping stones with Zuri and left the space open. Smart kid. We stayed 3 hours. I said maybe 40 words total, most of them. Be careful near the water. Callum said even less to me. Thank you for coming at the beginning. Thank you for today at the end. Both times he couldn't quite meet my eyes. I wasn't trying to hurt him or scare him, but I had, and knowing that sat in my chest like a stone with no pink vein through it. Many people online and off shared their own stories of being separated from biological relations and the effect it had on them. Adopted kids who found siblings at 40 and grieved the decades between. Half-brothers who grew up in the same city and never knew. I read every single message. I don't fully understand it because genes don't mean much to me. I've never felt pulled toward anyone by blood alone. But I don't have to understand it to respect it. Denise agreed to continue supervising visits. Twice a month became 3 times. Callum never asked for more. He never asked for money. He never asked me a single question about Marcus, though I could see him swallow them sometimes, these unasked things moving behind his careful eyes. The shift happened on a Wednesday in October. Zuri was having a bad day, overstimulated nonverbal rocking on the living room floor with her hands over her ears. I was on the phone with her occupational therapist trying to get an emergency appointment. Denise was in the kitchen looking helpless, and Callum, who was there for a scheduled visit, sat down on the floor 6 feet away from Zuri, said nothing, and started sorting her rock collection by color. He didn't touch her, didn't talk to her. just sorted rocks slowly, where she could see his hands. After 20 minutes, she crawled over and corrected his categories: sedimentary, igneous, metamorphic, not color. He nodded seriously and let her rebuild the whole system. I stood in the doorway and thought about Marcus saying times I'm going to be the father I never had. Asterisk, he'd meant it. I believe he'd meant it every time. But meaning something and doing it are different currencies, and Marcus had been bankrupt in ways I was only beginning to map. That night, I wrote Callum a card. Nothing elaborate. Asterisk. Thank you for being patient with her. I hope you'll stay involved. Asterisk. By Thanksgiving the following year, he brought his girlfriend, a polite, quiet girl named Sophie, who Zuri immediately decided was her rival for Callum's attention. Amara, now 14, rolled her eyes at her sister's jealousy, and then spent the entire meal asking Sophie about university in London, with an intensity that told me exactly where my daughter's college list was heading. I watched them across my table. Marcus's 3 children together in a room he never allowed to exist. I don't know why he lived the way he did. I have a theory that a boy who grew up in 7 homes learned to keep his worlds in separate boxes because that's how he survived, and he never unlearned it, even when the stakes changed. Even when the boxes held people who deserved to know about each other, I'll never confirm this. The only person who could explain is gone, and he left no voicemails for me. Just cards in a shoebox addressed to a boy I almost turned away. I personally don't feel like I'm in any place to have a relationship with Callum, and I don't think he wants one with me. We are something unnamed, 2 people orbiting the same wound, making room. But my girls have a brother, and their brother has a family. Marcus couldn't build that bridge. He was too busy maintaining the walls. I tore them down. Not gracefully, not willingly most days, but down. I stole her from her boyfriend. I knew exactly what I was doing. I saw the crack in their relationship and I wedged myself into it. 8 years later, I'm building cardboard walls inside my own house to separate myself from the woman I fought so hard to win. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about choosing a partner who is willing to betray someone for you. That ability doesn't expire, it just finds a new target. I came home, found 1 text message on her phone, 1 surviving message after she'd scrubbed the rest, and my entire marriage collapsed in a single sentence from a coworker describing my wife's body like she belonged to him. I'm 36. My wife is Andrea. She's 34, mother of our 2-year-old son. The guy she slept with is Derek, some opportunistic colleague from her office. Then there's Cairo, 33, a woman I started seeing while still living under the same roof as Andrea. And somewhere in the background is Neil, Andrea's ex-boyfriend, the guy I deliberately took her from all those years ago. He's probably laughing right now. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the beginning is where the rot started. I met Andrea at a house party in 2016. She was with Neil, quiet conservative Neil, who wore khakis to barbecues and thought a bold Friday night meant ordering Thai instead of Chinese. They'd been together 3 years. He was safe. She was bored. And I could see it in the way she laughed too loud at my jokes, the way her eyes stayed on me 2 beats longer than they should have when Neil was mid-sentence about his accounting firm. I didn't stumble into their relationship. I detonated it. Neil had cheated on her once. A drunken mistake at a work conference, the kind of thing couples either survive or don't. Andrea was in the trying to survive it phase when I showed up. I became her confidant, her emotional outlet, the guy who said all the things Neil was too emotionally stunted to articulate. I told her she deserved someone who would never make her feel second. I told her Neil's infidelity was a character flaw, not a mistake. I told her she was settling. Every word was calculated. Every late-night phone call, every accidental coffee run near her office, every carefully timed text that arrived right when I knew Neil would be at his most neglectful. I was engineering a theft, and it worked. She left Neil on a Tuesday. She was in my bed by Thursday. I married a woman who was willing to betray someone for me and told myself the betrayal was justified because I was the better man. 8 years. A wedding. A mortgage. A son named Marcus who has her eyes and my stubbornness. 8 years of building something I thought was unshakable because I convinced myself the foundation wasn't rotten. Then came the text. I wasn't snooping. Marcus had a fever, Andrea was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I picked it up to check if it was her mother calling back about the pediatrician recommendation. Instead, I saw a message from Derek. Work, that read, "Times I can still feel your thighs around me. When can I see you again? Asterisk. One message. One surviving message in an otherwise empty thread. No prior conversation, no build-up, just that sentence, sitting alone like a confession someone forgot to burn. My hands didn't shake. That's the part I remember most clearly. I set the phone down, poured Marcus's apple juice, and waited. When Andrea came out of the bathroom toweling her hair, I held the phone up and said, "Who's Derek?" The color left her face in stages. Forehead first, then cheeks, then lips. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It's not. Don't." I was going through something. After Marcus was born, I felt invisible. I felt like my body wasn't mine anymore, like I was just... How many times? 3. It was 3 times. It's over. I ended it 2 weeks ago. The messages are deleted. I know. You deleted them because you knew. She didn't answer. She just stood there, dripping onto the hardwood floor we'd picked out together, and I thought, times, this is exactly what Neil felt. This is exactly what I did to Neil. Asterisk. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I went to the garage, pulled out the moving boxes we'd never recycled, and started building. Cardboard walls. I'm not kidding. I sectioned off the living room with flattened boxes, duct tape, and a level of architectural commitment that probably should have alarmed me. I created a doorway schedule. She enters through the front. I use the side entrance. Kitchen from 6 to 7 is hers. 7 to 8 is mine. The bathroom has a color-coded lock system involving hair ties on the doorknob. People ask me later times, if you're already so hell-bent on not getting back together and even considering dating, why stay in that house? What are you holding on to? Asterisk. I didn't have a good answer. Marcus, maybe? The mortgage? The stubborn, irrational belief that if I left first, she won? I needed her to watch me, not need her. I needed her to live inside the wreckage. Andrea's mental and physical health kept deteriorating with time. She stopped eating full meals. Her physician recommended therapy. She started going, but she told no one else, not her parents, not her sister, not her friends. She feared embarrassment. The shame of it was eating her from the inside, and she was letting it. I couldn't watch that and stay silent. I called her mother. Andrea needs you right now. We're separating. I told Andrea she could tell them we'd grown out of love instead of the truth. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes and whispered, "Why would you protect me?" I didn't answer because the honest answer was ugly. I wasn't protecting her. I was protecting the version of our story where I remained the good one. Her parents moved into the guest room for 2 weeks. Her mother cooked. Her father played with Marcus. Andrea started showering again, eating again, existing again. And I downloaded a dating app. That's where I found Cairo. Single mother, 1 son, recently divorced after her husband's affair. She understood damage. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. Our first date felt like exhaling after holding my breath for months. 3 weeks into seeing Cairo, I invited her and her son over to the house for dinner. My side of the house. My kitchen window. My rules. I heard Andrea's bedroom door open upstairs just as Cairo's boy and Marcus started laughing together in the living room. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Then stopped. Andrea stood at the top of the stairs in a sweatshirt I recognized as mine, one I'd left behind in the laundry rotation we never properly divided. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She looked like she'd been sleeping, or trying to. Cairo's son had found Marcus's toy trucks, and the two of them were crashing them together on the living room rug, making explosion sounds with their mouths. Cairo was kneeling beside them, her hand on Marcus's back, helping him rebuild a tower so they could knock it down again. Marcus was laughing. That full-body toddler laugh where the joy takes over everything. Andrea watched this for exactly 11 seconds. I counted because I was frozen, holding a wooden spoon over a pot of pasta, watching her watch them. Then she turned and looked at me. No tears. No screaming. Just a look that said times. So, this is what you've been building toward. Asterisk. She went back upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close. Not slam close. The quiet kind of closing that's worse. Cairo glanced at me. Was that her? Yeah. You okay? Yeah. I wasn't. But the pasta was boiling over, and Marcus needed his juice cup refilled, and Cairo's son wanted goldfish, crackers, and the mechanics of being alive carried me through the next 2 hours the way they always do. Cairo left at 8. She kissed me at the door, brief, careful, the kind of kiss someone gives when they know the walls have ears. I watched her buckle her son into his car seat and pull away, and then I stood in the doorway breathing cold air until my lungs hurt. Andrea was waiting in the kitchen when I came back inside, sitting at the table. My side of the table past the cardboard partition I'd built, like some deranged architect of emotional warfare. She seems nice, Andrea said. Don't. I'm not being sarcastic. She seems nice. Her son is sweet. Marcus liked him. I leaned against the counter. You're on my side of the wall. I know. She pressed her palms flat on the table. Her nails were bitten down to nothing. Is this what it's going to be? Other women in my house playing with my son while I... You signed the separation agreement. This house is shared space with designated... I know what I signed. Then you know I'm not doing anything wrong. She laughed. Not the laugh I fell in love with. Something thinner, more fractured. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing everything cruel. I didn't respond because she was right, and because the honest version of why I'd invited Cairo over, the version I wouldn't say out loud, was that I wanted Andrea to see it. I wanted her to feel the specific texture of being replaced while still being present. I wanted her to understand what I'd done to Neil, what she'd done to me, what this whole cursed cycle actually looked like from the outside. I wanted her to watch me not need her. The next morning I called my lawyer. He said what he'd been saying for weeks. Living together is just lingering. You're not healing. You're performing. He was right. Everyone was right. The cardboard walls, the kitchen schedules, the color-coded bathroom system, none of it was separation. It was a stage set I'd built so I could star in my own suffering. I started writing the letter that night. It took me 4 drafts. The first 3 were angry accusations dressed up as closure. The 4th was honest, which meant it was shorter and worse. Asterisk, Andrea. I manipulated you away from Neil. I saw a crack in your relationship and I pried it open because I wanted you, and I told myself wanting was the same as deserving. I built our marriage on the thing I now hate you for. I don't know how to forgive you. I don't know how to forgive me. I'm giving you the house for Marcus. My lawyer will handle the rest. I'm sorry for the cardboard walls. I'm sorry for bringing Cairo here. I'm sorry for calling your mother before you were ready. I'm sorry for every act of kindness that was actually control. Please tell Marcus I'll be back. Asterisk. I left it on the porch under a river rock on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday evening, I was on a flight to Anchorage. Alaska was not a plan. Alaska was a direction. I rented a cabin outside Seward from a guy who asked no questions and had no Wi-Fi. For 3 weeks, I didn't speak to anyone except a cashier at a gas station and a dog that followed me on a hiking trail. Andrea signed the papers uncontested. My lawyer emailed me the confirmation. I read it on a borrowed phone at a public library in Kenai, sitting between a teenager doing homework and an old man reading newspapers. The most significant legal event of my life, absorbed in fluorescent silence. I gave her the house. She kept Marcus's room exactly as it was. I took a condo downtown 12 minutes away, close enough for drop-offs, far enough to breathe. Cairo and I still talk. We're not rushing anything. She told me once, I don't need you to be healed. I just need you to be honest about the wounds. I'm trying. Some days I manage it. Marcus is 2.5 now. I haven't seen him in 3 months. Tomorrow's the first visit. I bought him new trucks, the crashing kind he likes. I've rehearsed what to say if he's angry, if he cries, if he doesn't remember my voice. She was and is a cheater. I know that. But I'm the one who taught her the choreography. I pursued a woman who was willing to leave someone for me and then acted devastated when the pattern held. Not sure how you could love someone who was dishonest from the start, but I did because I was dishonest from the start too. If you have any advice to make my life better, kindly do so. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm not the villain either. I'm just a man sitting in a new apartment with toy trucks on the counter, hoping my son still knows my face, hoping Andrea finds whatever it was she was looking for in all those arms that weren't mine, and hoping without any guarantee that the cycle I set spinning 8 years ago has finally, mercifully stopped.
My younger sister Clara was born with a crown on her head. Not a real one, of course, but a heavy invisible one that made her the center of our family's universe. If I got an A on a test, Clara had to get a new doll to celebrate my achievement. If I had a birthday party, she'd have a meltdown midway through because no one was watching times her times open times my times presence. My parents' solution was always the same. Just let her. Sam, my mom, would sigh exhausted. It's just easier. Easier for them, maybe. For me, it meant a childhood spent as a supporting character in the Clara show. It meant I learned to shrink to make my needs smaller so they wouldn't inconvenience the star. This dynamic bled into every corner of our lives. By the time we were teenagers, Clara had an impressive body count of burned friendships. No one wanted to hang out with the girl who had to pick the movie, the restaurant, and the topic of conversation every single time. So she'd come crying to me. And I, the reliable built-in best friend, would always be there to pick up the pieces. But then something shifted. Around the time she turned 22, it was like the crown finally got too heavy. She got a steady job, started paying her own bills, and seemed to realize the world didn't in fact revolve around her. When her lease was up, she asked if she could move in with me and my long-term boyfriend Mark for a few months to save for a deposit on her own place. Mark was hesitant. He'd heard all the stories. "Are you sure about this?" he'd asked, his hand on my arm. "She's different now," I insisted, believing it. With every fiber of my being. I wanted to believe it. She's really matured. And for a year she was. It was nice. We fell into a comfortable rhythm. We'd cook dinner together, binge-watch terrible reality TV, and talk about our days. She was considerate. She was fun. The sister I always wished I had was finally living in my spare bedroom. I let my guard down completely. I thought the old Clara was gone for good. Then Mark proposed. He did it on our anniversary in the little Italian restaurant where we had our first date. It was perfect, intimate, and everything I'd ever dreamed of. When we got home, giddy and floating on air, Clara was the first person we told. She shrieked, hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack, and immediately started gushing. "Oh my God. I'm going to be a bridesmaid. I have to be a bridesmaid. Right, Sam, please." She begged, her eyes wide and shining. I've never been in a wedding before. That little voice of caution in the back of my head whispered a warning, but I ignored it. This was the new Clara. The mature Clara. "Of course you're a bridesmaid," I said, laughing. It was like I had personally handed her back the crown and scepter. The change was instantaneous. The next morning I woke up to 17 texts from her. They were all links. Links to hideous poofy sequin bridesmaid dresses in a shade of lilac that would make everyone look vaguely ill. The price tag on them was over $400. I had 4 other bridesmaids, all of us on budgets. I went into the kitchen where she was sipping coffee. "Clara, these are a lot. And they're really expensive." She waved a dismissive hand. "Don't worry about it. It's for your time's wedding. It needs to be perfect. This is the vision." Asterisk my time's vision, I corrected gently, is for my friends, not to go broke. Her face fell. The lower lip started to tremble, a move she'd perfected by age 5. But I already told the other girls this was the dress. I started a group chat. I checked my phone. She had. And she'd titled it Samantha's Bride Tribe Official. 2 of my other bridesmaids had already replied with polite concerns about the price. Clara had replied to them. "It's non-negotiable for the aesthetic Sam wants." It got worse from there. She decided she didn't like the caterer Mark and I had painstakingly chosen. She called them herself, pretending to be my assistant, and tried to change the entire menu to an all-vegan selection because she was in a vegan phase. I only found out when the caterer called me, confused, to confirm the last-minute overhaul. "Clara." "What the hell?" I confronted her. The catering contract clutched in my hand. "You can't do that. This is our wedding." "I was just trying to help," she wailed, tears instantly welling up. "The chicken option was so boring. I wanted your guests to have a unique culinary experience." Every decision Mark and I made, she tried to veto. The band was tacky. The flower arrangements were uninspired. She even made a 5-hour Spotify playlist titled Clara's Turn Up Tracks and sent it to our DJ, telling him it was our official playlist and to ignore any other list sent by the bride or groom. The final straw with the bridesmaid role came when she tried to change the color scheme. Mark and I had chosen deep blues and grays. Simple, elegant. I came home from work to find Clara in the living room, surrounded by dozens of fabric swatches in various shades of hot pink and neon orange. "What is this?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "The blues are so depressing, Sam," she said, not looking up. "A wedding should be a celebration. I'm thinking more of a tropical fusion theme." "It's much more me." "More times you asterisk." "Yeah. It just feels right." That night I sat her down on the couch. Mark was there, a silent pillar of support next to me. "Clara," I started, my heart pounding. "I love you. But you can't be my bridesmaid anymore." The explosion was immediate and spectacular. It was a tantrum of Shakespearean proportions. I wasn't just firing her from a ceremonial role. I was, according to her, assassinating her character. "You've always been jealous of me," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You can't stand to see me happy and involved. You're trying to cut me out of your life because you're finally getting something I don't have." She stormed off to her room, and for the next week the apartment was thick with tension. She'd either ignore me completely or make passive-aggressive comments under her breath. I thought that despite the drama, I had at least solved the main problem. She was no longer in the bridal party. She had no more official duties. She was just a guest. A regular, normal guest. I thought I had finally drawn a line in the sand she couldn't cross. This afternoon, I got home early from a dress fitting, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The dress was perfect. The wedding was back on track. I walked into our apartment, quietly kicking off my shoes, and I heard voices coming from the living room. It was Clara and Mark. I smiled, thinking maybe they were finally mending fences. Then I heard her words dripping with that fake saccharine concern she uses when she's about to bulldoze someone. "Look, Mark, I'm just saying it from an outside perspective," she said. "Samantha can be a little traditional, but the vows she wrote are just so dry. There's no passion. I took the liberty of rewriting them for you both just to give them a little more emotional punch. You can just read these instead. She'll thank us later." I stood there in the entryway, my shoes half off, my blood turning to ice. My own vows. The words I had cried over, words I had poured out from the deepest parts of my love for Mark, were just a rough draft for her to edit. Mark was staring at the sheaf of papers in his hand like he'd been handed a live snake. His face was a mask of disbelief. He looked up and saw me. Relief and horror warred in his eyes. "Sam," he started. Clara, oblivious, turned with a triumphant smile. "Oh, good, you're here. Now we can all go over them together. I really think I captured your voice, but with you no more poetry." I dropped my purse on the floor. The sound was a flat, dead thud in the quiet room. "Show me," I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was low and hollow. Mark silently held out the papers. I took them. Her familiar loopy handwriting covered the pages, my heartfelt, simple promises crossed out and replaced with flowery, over-the-top garbage. She'd added quotes from cheesy rom-coms and a line about our souls being twin flames dancing in a cosmic ballet. I felt a wave of nausea. "You rewrote our vows," I stated. It wasn't a question. I elevated them. She chirped, beaming. "It's what I do. I see a vision, and I make it better. Something inside me didn't just snap. It vaporized. The part of me that had spent 30 years making myself smaller, making room for her, just ceased to exist. In its place was a cold, hard certainty. I looked from the papers to her smug, expectant face. Then I looked at Mark, whose expression said everything. He was done. We were done. Clara, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. Pack your things. Her smile faltered. What? What are you talking about? You have 1 hour. Pack everything you own. I want you out of this apartment. Sam, you're overreacting. She said, her tone shifting to condescending. It was just a suggestion. Don't be so sensitive. I am not being sensitive, I said, taking a step forward. I am being clear. You have preyed on my kindness, my history of letting things go. Just to make it easier. You have tried to hijack my engagement, my friendships, my menu, my music, and now the literal words, Mark. And I will say, to promise our lives to each other. You don't see this wedding as a celebration of our love. You see it as your party, and we are just the props. The tears started to well in her eyes. The old playbook. That's not true. I just want it to be perfect for you. No, you want it to be perfect for times. You times, Mark cut in, his voice firm as steel. He stood up and came to my side, a solid wall of support. You have disrespected Sam, you've disrespected me, and you've disrespected our relationship at every single turn. We're done. You're kicking me out, she wailed, the performance hitting its crescendo. Onto the street, my own sister. You have a job. You have parents who will welcome you with open arms. You are not my responsibility anymore. I said, turning away from her. I couldn't look at her. And just so we're crystal clear, you are no longer invited to the wedding at all. You are not a bridesmaid, you are not a guest. You are not coming. The scream she let out was primal. It was the sound of a queen being dethroned. You can't do this to me. You're a monster. Samantha, a cruel, jealous monster. She stormed into her room, slamming the doors so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. Mark and I stood in the living room, the rewritten vows still in my hand. I slowly, deliberately tore them into tiny pieces and let them fall into the trash can. Are you okay? He asked, wrapping his arms around me. I've never been better, I whispered into his chest, and I meant it. A 30-year weight had just been lifted from my soul. The first call came exactly 58 minutes later. Clara was still in her room, throwing things into boxes with theatrical force. My phone buzzed with Mom's picture on the screen. I sighed and answered, putting it on speaker. Samantha. What on earth have you done? She began, no hello, no preamble. I set a boundary, Mom. For the first time in my life, I actually set one and held it. You kicked your sister out. She called me hysterical, and she said you uninvited her from your wedding. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. There was an exhausted sigh from her end. The sigh I'd been hearing my whole life. Samantha, honey, you know how she is. She gets excited. She means well. Don't you think you're being a little harsh? Just let her come to the wedding. It's just easier. No, I said, the word a stone in my mouth. I will not be lighting myself on fire to keep her warm anymore. And I won't let you guilt me into it either. You're tearing this family apart over a wedding. She tried to rewrite my vows. Mom, I said flatly. There was a pause. Well, maybe they needed some punching up. She's always been the more creative one. I hung up. I just pressed the red button and ended the call. Mark squeezed my hand. A text from my Aunt Carol came through a few minutes later times. Family is forever. Brides are for a day. Think about what you're doing. Asterisk. I blocked her number. Then came the text from my dad. A group text to me and my mom. Asterisk, Sam, your mother is very upset. We need to fix this. Clara is your only sister. Asterisk. I stared at the phone at the decades of enabling and excuses all flooding my screen at once. They were all telling me the same thing times shrink. Make yourself smaller. It's just easier. Asterisk. They saw a family crisis. I saw a prison break. Clara emerged from her room, an hour later, 2 suitcases in tow. Her face tear-streaked and puffy. She refused to look at me. She looked at Mark. I hope you're happy, she spat at him. You turned her against her own family. No, Clara, Mark said, not missing a beat. You did that all by yourself. She left, slamming the apartment door behind her. The silence she left in her wake was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. For 2 weeks, the pressure campaign was relentless. My parents called daily. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me on Facebook telling me I was being selfish. The narrative was set I was the cold, cruel sister, and Clara was the heartbroken victim who just loved me times too much. Asterisk. I started to doubt myself. Late one night, I turned to Mark, my stomach in knots. Am I a monster? Am I destroying my family? He took my face in his hands. You are building our family. You are protecting our peace. Their family is built on the idea that your feelings don't matter. We are building ours on the idea that they're the only thing that does. Don't you dare let them make you feel guilty for that. He was right. My revenge wasn't going to be loud or dramatic. It wasn't going to be a screaming match or a scathing email. My revenge was my silence. It was my blocked numbers and my unanswered texts. My revenge was the photo I posted the next day of Mark and me at our menu tasting, smiling and happy with the caption times. 2 weeks to go. Can't wait to marry my best friend. Number, no drama, just love. Asterisk. My revenge was the wedding itself. It was peaceful, it was beautiful, and it was completely, totally, and utterly times ours. Asterisk. It was filled only with people who loved and respected us. Standing there saying the vows times I times wrote, looking at my husband, I felt a profound sense of calm. The crown was gone. The show was over. And for the first time in my life, I was the main character in my own story.
8 years. You can build a life in 8 years. You can also build a really elaborate cage. Ours was furnished with a king-size bed, a 60-inch TV, and a revolving door for her friends. It all came down to an iPad she forgot to log out of. I wasn't even looking for anything. I just needed to look up a recipe. But there they were. Messages. Not just one guy. 2. Timelines, overlapping details that made my stomach turn into a cement mixer. This wasn't a drunken mistake. This was a hobby. I sat on the edge of our bed, the iPad glowing in my hands, and waited for her to get home from yoga. To be fair, I wasn't a saint. I'd lied. Early on, I lied about stupid shit money where I was going after work. I wasn't cheating, I just needed space. I'd sit in my car at a park overlooking the city just to breathe air that didn't feel recycled by our arguments. The lies were my escape hatches. Pathetic, I know. We went to therapy for it. Doctor. Evan said I had a fear of confrontation and that I created small dishonesties to avoid large conflicts. Sarah, on the other hand, created large conflicts to avoid any kind of honesty. Her first affair, year 3, was with a coworker. She cried for a week. I forgave her. The second year, 5, was with an old college flame who slid into her DMs. She said she felt lost and unseen. We went to more therapy. I was told to be more present. I tried. I really fucking tried. This time, with the iPad evidence burning a hole in my lap, there were no more chances left in the tank. The front door clicked open. Hey, I'm back, she called out, her voice full of that breezy cheerfulness she used when she was hiding something. I didn't move from the bed. She walked into the bedroom, dropping her gym bag on the floor. Tough day, she asked, starting to unpin her hair. I held up the iPad. I didn't say a word. I just turned the screen toward her. Her face went through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds: confusion, recognition, panic, anger, and finally a cold, hard defiance. You went through my messages, she snapped. You left it on the coffee table logged in. You wanted me to see it, Sarah. That's bullshit, Walter. You're just like you've always been. Snooping. Looking for a reason to be a victim. A reason I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. I'm looking at 2 of them right now, Mark and David. Are they a package deal, or do you see them on alternate Tuesdays? The fight didn't last long. It was less of a fight and more of a final system failure. The yelling was just the sound of the machinery grinding to a halt. I want you out, I said, my voice eerily calm. What? Get your stuff. And get out. You can't be serious, she said, her tone shifting to wounded. After everything, 8 years, you're just going to throw me out. You threw us out a long time ago. I'm just cleaning up the mess. And that was it. Or it should have been. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. She was in the kitchen humming, pouring a cup like it was any other Tuesday. Morning, she said, not looking at me. I just stared at her. What are you doing, Sarah? Making coffee. You want some? No. I want to know what you're still doing at my house. The mortgage was in my name. A detail that felt petty to bring up, but suddenly seemed like the only piece of solid ground I had left. It's my house too, she said, leaning against the counter. My name is on the lease. She was right. We'd signed the lease renewal together. My stomach sank. You can't seriously expect to stay here, I said. Where am I supposed to go, Walter? On the street. My parents live 500 miles away. My friends all have roommates. She sipped her coffee. It's just until I get things sorted out. A few weeks tops. A few weeks turned into a new kind of hell. We were ghosts haunting the same space. I slept on the couch. We had a silent treaty about the bathroom schedule. Groceries were a nightmare of passive-aggressive post-it notes on the fridge. Walter, do not eat the yogurt. She acted as if we were just going through a rough patch. One night, I came home from work to find she'd made my favorite dinner. Lasagna. I thought we could talk, she said, setting the table for 2. There's nothing to talk about. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and went to the living room. You can't just shut me out, she yelled from the kitchen. I'm trying here. You're the one who lied for years. You pushed me to this. That was her new angle. My old mistakes were now the root cause of her new ones. It was a twisted logic I couldn't even begin to untangle. I just turned the TV up louder. The days bled together. Day 12, I found her crying on the kitchen floor, saying she had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. I almost caved. Almost. Day 17, she brought a guy home, not Mark or David. A new one. I was on the couch pretending to be asleep when they walked in. They saw me and went straight to our bedroom and shut the door. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, listening to the muffled laughter through the wall, feeling my house shrink around me until it was nothing but a coffin. Day 21 was the breaking point. I came home exhausted and she was sitting on the front steps, her suitcase next to her. For a second, a blinding flash of relief hit me. She was finally leaving. Thank God, I muttered under my breath. She stood up as I approached. My car won't start, she said. The battery's dead. Can you give me a jump? I stared at the suitcase. Are you leaving? She shrugged. I was going to go stay at Ashley's for a few days. Give you some space. She smiled, a sad, pathetic little smile. See, I'm trying to do the right thing. Okay, I said, my voice flat. Let me get the cables. I gave her car a jump. The engine sputtered to life. She got out of the driver's seat and came over to my window. You know, she said, leaning down. It would be a lot easier for everyone if you just left instead. I can afford the rent. You could go stay with your brother for a while. It's the least you could do after everything you put me through. And there it was. After 3 weeks of being a prisoner in my own home, after she cheated, lied, and brought another man into our bed, the final play was to make me the villain who should be exiled. All my fault. Always. Something inside me didn't just break. It vaporized. The part of me that ever felt guilt, the part that tried to see her side, the part that still somewhere deep down loved the girl she used to be, it was all gone. Replaced by a cold, quiet calm. Get in your car, Sarah, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. Don't be like that, Walter. I'm just saying. Get in your car and go to Ashley's. She scowled, but something in my eyes must have spooked her because she backed away and got in her car without another word. I watched her pull away from the curb and disappear down the street. I walked back into my house. The air felt heavy, stale with her presence. I knew she'd be back. This was just a temporary reprieve. A weekend passed from my own prison. She'd come back Sunday night with some new sob story or a fresh line of attack. But this time, I wouldn't be here waiting. Not like this. I walked into the kitchen, the silence buzzing in my ears. I saw her stupid fucking yogurt in the fridge and felt a surge of something that wasn't anger. It was clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do. I pulled out my phone. My thumb scrolled past her number. I didn't even slow down. I went into my contacts, typing a single word into the search bar, landlord. His name popped up. Then I deleted it and typed a different one. A name I got from a buddy at work months ago. A just-in-case number I never thought I'd use. My finger hovered over the screen, the two words glowing back at me. Eviction lawyer. I hit the call button. A man with a voice like gravel and stale coffee answered on the second ring. Hayes. I explained my situation. The lease, the cheating, the 21 days of psychological warfare. I expected sympathy, or at least a drawn-out legal opinion. I got neither. Okay, Hayes said, a sound of shuffling paper in the background. She, a tenant. You can't just change the locks. You need to give her a formal, written 30-day notice to vacate. You can find a template online. Print it, sign it, date it, and hand it to her. If she's not out by day 31, call me back. We file for unlawful detainer. It'll cost you, but you'll get your house back. He paused. Anything else? That's it. That's it. It's a business transaction now, kid. Stop treating it like a breakup. He hung up. I found the template. I filled in the blanks times Sarah Jensen asterisk. Asterisk, 30 days asterisk. I printed it. The warm paper felt like a weapon in my hand. She came back Sunday night just as I knew she would. She walked in carrying a bag of groceries, a peace offering. "Hey," she said, trying for a soft tone. "I got that sourdough you like." I didn't say anything. I just walked over and handed her the paper. She read it. Her face cycled through confusion, then disbelief, then a familiar hot rage. What the hell is this? A 30-day notice? Are you evicting me? "I'm giving you notice to vacate the property," I said, my voice as flat and gray as the document itself. I was quoting Hayes. I was a businessman. "You can't do this. This is my home." "It was our home," I corrected. "Now it's a property. And you have 30 days. I turned and walked to the couch. My couch now put on my headphones and drowned her out. The month that followed was a slow, agonizing, beautiful exorcism. It started with a week of her not packing at all, testing me. She'd cook elaborate meals, walk around in my old t-shirts, and accidentally brush against me in the hallway. I ignored her. I ate protein bars for dinner and stayed in my room. On day 8, I came home and found a cardboard box in the living room. It was half filled with her shoes. Victory. Every box that appeared was a milestone. First, the living room. She took the throw pillows I hated and the lamp with the weird fringe shade. The room immediately felt bigger, cleaner. Then the bathroom. An entire universe of lotions, hair products, and makeup disappeared from the counter, and I could suddenly see the porcelain sink. I felt like I could breathe deeper. The hardest part was the bedroom. I had reclaimed it the night I gave her the notice, changing the sheets and moving her pillows to the floor outside the door. She'd been sleeping in the guest room since. Watching her pack up 8 years from that space was surreal. She took down photos of us in Italy, in Mexico, at my brother's wedding. She handled them with a theatrical sadness, glancing over at me for a reaction. I just sat on my bed, and watched my face a perfect blank. I felt nothing. The man in those pictures wasn't me anymore. He was just some guy who made bad decisions. The last night, the house was an echo chamber. All that was left of her was a stack of boxes by the front door and a single sad-looking ficus tree she couldn't fit in her car. Her friend Ashley, the one she'd supposedly been staying with, came to help with the final load. Ashley wouldn't even look at me. Sarah stood at the open door, the apartment key in her hand. "So this is it?" she asked. "After everything?" "This is it," I confirmed. She held out the key. "I really did love you, you know." "I know," I said. It was probably true in her own broken way. But it didn't matter anymore. Love wasn't a good enough reason to be miserable. I took the key from her palm, our fingers not touching. She left. The door clicked shut. It was the loudest, most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The silence she left behind wasn't empty. It was clean. For the first time in years, the air in my own home didn't feel heavy with unspoken words and secrets. The first thing I did was throw away the ficus tree. The next week, I saw a doctor. Not a therapist. A psychiatrist. I told him about the lies, my inability to focus, the constant buzzing anxiety that I'd always just called my personality. He listened. He asked questions no one had ever asked me. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a referral for testing. The diagnosis was adult ADHD. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. It was a starting point. It was a map to a different version of me. I started running. Every morning I'd lace up my shoes and just go pounding the pavement until the noise in my head went quiet. I lost 15 pounds. I started cooking for myself real food, not the takeout we'd always defaulted to. I painted the living room a color she would have hated, a deep common gray. I bought a new couch. I pulled my old guitar out of the closet, an instrument I hadn't touched since we met, and my fingers still remembered the chords. My house became a home again. My home. About 2 months after she left, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. It was a screenshot of a picture my brother had posted online, me at a backyard barbecue, smiling, holding a beer, looking healthy. The text below it read, "Times, wow, you look good. Guess it's true what they say, I was just holding you back." Asterisk. The old Walter would have engaged. He would have felt a spike of anger, a need to defend himself, to argue. He would have typed out a whole paragraph explaining how his well-being had nothing to do with her. But I wasn't the old Walter. I looked at her attempt to insert herself into my new life to claim some kind of credit for my happiness, even as a negative influence. It was the same old move, make everything about her. I typed back a single sentence. Asterisk. You're not that important. Asterisk. Then I blocked her number. I put my phone down, picked up my guitar, and started to play. The chords filled the clean, quiet air of my house. And for the first time, it sounded like my song. It started with a game. One of those dumb, late-night, wine-fueled games you play when you're too tired to put on a movie. My wife Ellie leaned over on the couch, her eyes a little too bright. "Okay, babe," she said, poking my ribs. "Rate, my friends. 1 to 10. What? Why? Just do it. Be brutally honest. I want to know what you really think." I sighed. It was easier to play along. Fine. Sarah's a 7. Kind of loud. Jessica is a 6. She always looks miserable. And Lily is, I don't know, a 9? Ellie's smile sharpened. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a hunter's smile. "A 9, Lily. Why a 9? I shrugged. "She's nice. She's funny. She actually asks how I'm doing. What's the big deal? I didn't mention that. Lily, with her easy laugh and genuine warmth, was the only one of Ellie's friends I could stand for more than 10 minutes. "No big deal," Ellie said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's just, you want her, don't you?" I laughed. A real gut laugh. "What are you talking about? She's your friend. She's married to Joshua. So I think it's hot. The thought of you and her..." She traced a finger down my arm. "We should make it happen." I pulled away the humor. Gone. "Ellie, stop. That's insane." But she didn't stop. For the next 2 weeks, it was all she talked about. It was a relentless, grinding campaign of psychological warfare. "Lily and Joshua are coming for dinner Friday," she'd say while I was making coffee. "You should wear that blue shirt. It really brings out your eyes. She'll love it." "I saw Lily at the store today. She'd text me at work. She asked about you. I think she's interested." "Don't you trust me?" she'd whisper at night, her body pressed against mine. "This is for us. To spice things up. It's my fantasy seeing you with another woman. With her." She was trying to plant a thought in my head that wasn't mine. To build a desire out of thin air. It was crazy, and I told her so. We fought. I'd yell, she'd cry, and then she'd accuse me of not loving her enough to fulfill her one little fantasy. I started feeling like I was the one going nuts. I'd grab her phone when she was in the shower, my hands shaking as I scrolled through texts. Nothing. Clean as a whistle. No weird messages from Lily, no secret apps. Just normal, boring couple stuff. It made me feel worse. Maybe I was the problem. The next escalation was movie night. Ellie insisted we invite Lily and her husband Joshua over. "Something fun," she chirped. The movie she picked was some idiotic comedy about a couple who decides to swap partners. The four of us sat on the couch, the air thick with forced casualness. Joshua was a quiet guy, an accountant or something, who always looked slightly overwhelmed by Ellie's energy. He just nursed his beer and stared at the screen. Lily sat beside him, smiling politely. Halfway through the movie, during a painfully awkward bedroom scene, Ellie snuggled up to me and stage whispered, "See? It's not so weird. They're having fun." I looked across the coffee table. Joshua was pointedly ignoring us, his jaw tight. Lily just looked uncomfortable. She caught my eye for a second and gave a weak apologetic shrug as if to say, "Times I don't know what's going on either." Asterisk. But Ellie was on a roll. "I think you and Lily would have way more chemistry than they do," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went dead silent. Joshua set his beer down with a loud clink. Lily's face flushed crimson. "Ellie," I hissed. "Knock it off." She just laughed a high, brittle sound. "What? I'm just being honest." The night ended early. Joshua practically dragged Lily out the door. As soon as they were gone, I rounded on Ellie. "What the hell was that? Are you trying to destroy your friendship? Humiliate me." She didn't even flinch. "I'm trying to make us happy. You're just too scared to admit you want it." The final push came a week later. I got home from work and she was standing in the living room vibrating with excitement. "Guess what? I did something amazing for you." For us. Oh God, what now? I booked a weekend getaway at that fancy lakeside resort upstate. For all four of us. My stomach sank. No. Absolutely not. After that movie night, no way. "Oh, don't be a baby," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "They're totally over it. I already talked to Lily. And I got us 2 separate cabins right next to each other for privacy." She paused, her eyes gleaming. "You and Lily will take one. Joshua and I will take the other." I just stared at her. It was all planned. All of it. A detailed, premeditated scheme to push me into another woman's bed. You're sick, Ellie. This isn't about a fantasy. There's something else going on. The only thing going on is that I'm trying to give my husband what he wants, she shrieked, her voice cracking. Tears started welling up. The waterworks were always her ace in the hole. And you're throwing it back in my face. Fine, I'll cancel it. I'll tell Lily you're not interested. I'll tell her you think she's ugly and boring. Don't you dare put words in my mouth. Then come, she begged, grabbing my hands. Just come for the weekend. No pressure. If you two don't click, then we'll drop it forever. I promise. Just give it a chance. For me. I looked at my wife, at the desperate, manic expression on her face, and something inside me snapped. The fighting wasn't working. Arguing was useless. The only way to find out what was really going on was to walk into the fire. To see how far she would actually push this. Fine, I said, my voice flat. I'll go. Her face lit up with a triumphant, terrifying smile. The drive up to the resort was the longest 2 hours of my life. We were in separate cars, me and Ellie in mine, Lily and Joshua in theirs. Ellie chattered excitedly the whole way planning the weekend, while I just gripped the steering wheel and stared at the road. When we got there, she handled everything. She grabbed the key cards from the front desk, practically bouncing on her toes. Okay, so Lily, you're with him in cabin 7, she said, shoving a key card into Lily's hand and pointing at me. Josh and I are right next door in 8. Let's all get settled and then the boys can get the bags. She didn't wait for an answer. She grabbed my arm and steered me toward the cabin with Lily trailing behind us, looking like she was walking to her own execution. Ellie pushed open the door to a room with a king-size bed and a fireplace. Isn't it perfect? Ellie chirped. She gave me a hard kiss. Have fun, you two, she whispered in my ear. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Then she turned, pulled Lily into a quick, awkward hug and walked out. The lock clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing in the silent room. And there we were. Just me and my wife's best friend standing 5 feet apart, trapped in the middle of a lie I was only just beginning to understand. The silence in the room was louder than a gunshot. Lily stood by the window, her arms crossed tight, staring out at the lake like it held the answers to the universe. I went to the mini fridge, pulled out 2 bottles of water, and twisted the caps off both. I don't know about you, I said holding one out to her, but I could use a drink that won't make this situation any weirder. She took it, her fingers brushing mine. A tiny electric spark of shared misery. Thanks. She took a long swallow. So she finally said, turning to face me, "My husband seems to have gotten the idea that I'm dying to sleep with you." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. What a coincidence. My wife has spent the last month trying to convince me it's my life's ambition to sleep with you. Lily's eyes widened, a flicker of understanding replacing the fear. She told you it was your fantasy. My fantasy, I confirmed, making air quotes. The one she invented for me. She said this was all to spice things up for us. That's the exact phrase Joshua used, she whispered, sinking onto the edge of the bed. He said he was being a generous husband, fulfilling my deepest unspoken desire. She looked up at me, her face a mask of dawning horror. They've been playing us. For how long? I asked the question, hanging in the air. I don't know. A year, maybe more. Little things. Late nights at the office. Business trips that didn't quite add up. He's been distant. And Ellie had been glued to her phone, but always erasing her tracks. The meticulous planning of this weekend, it wasn't a spontaneous fantasy. It was an exit strategy. A way to normalize the cheating, to make us all one big messed up complicit family. They're next door right now, aren't they? Lily said, her voice flat. Cabin 8, I said. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The 2 cabins, the fake swap. It was never about us. It was always about giving them an alibi to be together. A cold, hard fury I'd never felt before settled in my gut. I'm not playing their game. Lily looked at me, her eyes hardening. Neither am I. What do we do? We give them exactly what they don't want, I said. A problem. I knocked on the door of cabin 8. A full minute passed before Ellie answered, looking flustered, her hair a mess. Joshua was standing behind her, a smug look on his face. Hey, I said, trying to look sheepish. Sorry to interrupt, but this isn't going to work. Ellie's smile froze. What do you mean? I mean, me and Lily. It's too weird. We talked. We can't do it. It just feels wrong. I looked past Ellie to Joshua. No offense, man. He just grunted. Lily appeared behind me. He's right. I'm sorry, Josh. I thought I could, but I just can't. Ellie's face twisted with barely concealed rage. Are you kidding me? After all this, after I planned this whole perfect weekend? Maybe it's for the best, I said. Let's just pack up and go home. We can pretend this never happened. The drive home was silent and glacial. Ellie stared out the window, radiating fury. She thought she'd lost. She had no idea she was about to lose so much more. The next morning, I got up early, showered, and put on my work clothes. I'm heading to the office, I told Ellie as she lay in bed scrolling through her phone. Got a big project. Probably won't be back till late. Fine, she muttered, not even looking at me. I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove 2 blocks down the street. I parked and sent a text. Asterisk. Me. I'm out. The house is yours. Asterisk. A single word reply came from Lily almost instantly. Asterisk. Lily, he's on the move. Asterisk. She'd hired a private investigator, a buddy of her dad's. It was beautifully simple. For the next hour, I got a series of updates. Asterisk. Lily, he's on the freeway. Northbound. Asterisk. Asterisk. Lily, he just took our exit. Asterisk. Asterisk. Lily, he's on our street. Asterisk. The final text came at 9:15 a.m. Asterisk. Lily, he just went inside your building. I'm 5 minutes out. Asterisk. I pulled up just as Lily's car slid into the spot behind me. She got out, her face pale but resolute. She held up her phone. Ready. Let's go. I used my key. I didn't knock. I didn't yell. I just turned the lock as quietly as I could and pushed the door open. Lily was right behind me. We heard them before we saw them. Giggles from the bedroom. Our bedroom. I walked down the hall and stood in the doorway. Lily held her phone up over my shoulder, the camera app open. There they were. In my bed. Tangled together, naked and laughing. The laughter died the second Ellie saw me. Her eyes went wide with sheer animal panic. Joshua just looked pathetic trying to pull a sheet over himself. Click. 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 Lily didn't say a word, just lowered her phone. I looked at Ellie, at the woman I'd spent a decade of my life with. I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just a vast cold emptiness. Get dressed, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. Pack a bag. I want you out of my house in 10 minutes. Willie, baby, I can explain. 10 minutes, I repeated, turning my back on her. I walked into the closet, grabbed 3 black garbage bags, and started pulling her clothes off the hangers, stuffing them inside. Her shoes, her purses, her stupid little trinkets from the nightstand. All of it went into the bags. By the time I was done, Joshua had scurried out of the apartment like the rat he was. Ellie was standing by the door, dressed and crying. Please, she sobbed. Don't do this. I dragged the 3 garbage bags to the front door and threw them into the hallway. It's already done, I said, and I closed the door in her face. The fallout was swift and brutal. I filed for divorce the next day. I sent one of the photos to Ellie's older sister Sarah with a simple caption, Times, just thought you should know what your sister's been up to. Asterisk, my phone rang 2 minutes later. I didn't answer. Lily, it turned out, came from a family with very long, very sharp teeth. Her father owned the investment firm where Joshua worked. An hour after Lily told him what happened, Joshua was escorted out of his office by security, his career in finance utterly vaporized. No one would touch him. During their own divorce proceedings, Joshua cracked completely. He confessed everything. He told the lawyers he'd never even liked Ellie, let alone loved her. He said she'd pursued him relentlessly, manipulated him, and promised him a life he thought he wanted. He painted her as a predator. By trying to save his own skin, he buried her. My divorce was clean. The evidence was irrefutable. The prenup held. She got nothing. Her family, mortified by the exposure and her complete lack of remorse, cut her off. Last I heard, she was living in a crappy apartment on the other side of the state, working some dead-end retail job. Abandoned by her husband, her lover, her family, and her friends. I got the house. I got my life back. But it's not a clean victory. You don't walk away from that kind of betrayal unscathed. Some nights I still wake up thinking about that stupid game. Asterisk. Rate my friends. Asterisk. A hunter's smile. It was never a game. It was the beginning of the end. I'm in therapy now, trying to piece it all back together. Trying to learn how to trust someone again, starting with myself.
My mother died giving birth to me. That's the opening line of my story, the one that explains everything. My dad, unable to look at me without seeing her, shipped me off to my mother's sisters, my aunts Carol and June. They were old money, the kind that came with sprawling estates in Connecticut and a quiet, unshakable sense of duty. For the first 8 years of my life, I was raised on classical music, perfectly manicured lawns, and unconditional love. It was a gilded cage, but a warm one. Then my father remarried. His new wife, Brenda, came with a daughter my age, Claire. Suddenly, my father wanted his family back. My real family. I was summoned from my life of quiet comfort and thrust into a cramped suburban 4-bedroom that smelled like potpourri and resentment. My room was the one over the garage. It was always 10 degrees colder than the rest of the house. Claire's room had an ensuite bathroom and a walk-in closet. My dad said it was only fair since she'd been there first. It was the first of 1,000 cuts. I became the house ghost, the live-in help. Madison, could you set the table? Claire swamped with her debate prep. Claire would be upstairs, FaceTiming her friends. Madison, the dishwasher won't unload itself. My father would say this without looking up from the paper while Brenda painted her nails and Claire watched TV. They weren't cruel in a shouting, dramatic way. They were worse. They were indifferent. I was a utility, not a person. My own father looked through me. The only thing they couldn't control was my aunts. Carol and June saw what was happening. They couldn't pull me out. My father had full custody, but they could wage a quiet war of attrition with their checkbook. They paid for tutors when my grades slipped. They sent me to a summer art camp in Vermont. They bought me clothes that were infinitely nicer than anything Brenda bought for Claire, which only made things worse. Claire's jealousy was a simmering, toxic thing. It wasn't about the stuff. It was about the source. She had a mother who doted on her and a father who treated her like a princess. But my aunts represented something she couldn't have: old, untouchable wealth. An escape route. Must be nice, she'd sneer, watching me unbox a new laptop from Aunt June for my birthday. Having 2 rich old ladies to buy you whatever you want. It is, I'd say, my voice flat. Must be nice having a dad who remembers your birthday without a calendar alert. That usually shut her up. High school graduation was the final battlefield. My aunts, in typical fashion, went all out. They flew in a designer from New York for a custom prom dress, a stunning deep sapphire silk that probably cost more than my stepmother's car. They threw me a prom party at their country club that looked like something out of a magazine. 2 weeks later, they hosted my graduation party, a catered affair with a string quartet and an open bar for the adults. My father, Brenda, and Claire made a token appearance at both. They stood in a corner sipping their complimentary champagne and looking deeply uncomfortable, leaving after less than an hour. They didn't speak to me once. Then came the invitation to their party. A joint graduation party for Claire and Madison. That's what the card said in a frilly pink font that was entirely Claire. I knew it was a lie. It was a command performance away from my father to save face with his own friends and colleagues. I almost didn't go. Aunt Carol sat me down in her sunroom, holding my hand. You have to. She said, her voice gentle but firm. You have to walk in there with your head held high and let them see that they haven't broken you. So I went. The house was a shrine to Claire. A massive banner hung over the deck. Congratulations, Claire, our valedictorian, in the bottom right corner. As if an afterthought, someone had taken a Sharpie and written a tiny "in Madison." The yard was filled with my father's friends, Brenda's family, and dozens of Claire's classmates. I saw maybe 3 people I knew. A mountain of gifts was piled on a table, every single one addressed to Claire. Her school photos were framed and placed on every available surface. There were none of me. The cake was a 3-tiered monstrosity with a frosting portrait of Claire in her cap and gown. I found my aunts near the sad-looking punch bowl, their tailored linen suits a stark contrast to the sea of floral sundresses. Subtle Aunt June muttered, rattling the ice in her glass. "Just breathe, darling, Aunt," Carol said, squeezing my arm. "We're right here." I plastered on a smile and endured the small talk. People would congratulate me, their eyes sliding past me to find Claire the real star of the show. I felt like a ghost again, haunting the edges of my own life. Then my father tapped a spoon against his glass, calling for everyone's attention. My stomach twisted into a knot. "Thank you all for coming," he began, beaming, his arm draped around Claire's shoulders. "Brenda and I are just so proud to be celebrating our daughter Claire today." He launched into a 5-minute epic. He talked about her first steps, her first A on a report card, her tireless work ethic. He lauded her as debate team captain, head of the student council, and of course valedictorian. She has worked so incredibly hard to get where she is, to become the top student in her class. And I know she's going to do amazing things at Yale. I've never been prouder of anyone in my entire life. My daughter. My brilliant daughter. He was practically crying. The crowd awed and applauded. Claire Preen soaking it all in. My heart felt like a block of ice in my chest. I graduated summa cum laude. Top 1%. Claire was valedictorian by a decimal point, because she'd loaded up on easy A classes, while I took college-level physics and calculus. He knew that. I had told him. He finally turned his gaze for a brief, flickering moment toward me. I was standing next to Aunt June on the fringes of the crowd. And of course, he said, his tone shifting, becoming casual, dismissive. "We're also celebrating Madison today. She graduated too. Summa cum laude, so that's great. Good job." That was it. He turned back to Claire. "So, let's raise a glass to the graduate. To Claire." The world went silent. I could feel every eye in that yard either on me or deliberately avoiding me. The pity was worse than the neglect. My father hadn't just forgotten me. He had publicly, deliberately reduced my entire academic career to a footnote in his Golden Child's epic. The pretense of a joint party was incinerated in that single brutal moment. My aunts started moving toward me, their faces masks of cold fury. But I just shook my head, turned, and started walking toward the back gate, desperate for air. I didn't want their comfort. I didn't want anything. I just wanted to disappear. "Madison." The voice was sharp, cutting through the celebratory chatter behind me. I stopped my hand on the latch of the gate, but I didn't turn around. "Don't you dare walk away," Claire hissed, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path behind me. "You are not going to ruin this for me." I spun around, my hand dropping from the latch. "Ruin it for you? Are you kidding me? There isn't a single thing here that has anything to do with me." "Oh, here we go," she sneered, crossing her arms. Her pink dress suddenly looked childish and cheap. Poor little Madison, the tragic orphan. Do you ever get tired of that act? It's not an act, Claire. My mother is dead. That's a fact. One my father never lets me forget. Please. She rolled her eyes so hard. I'm surprised they didn't fall out. Your life is 1,000,000 times easier than mine. And you know it. You think being valedictorian was easy? I had to work for that. I had to earn my spot at Yale. I just stared at her dumbfounded by the sheer audacity. She took my silence as an invitation to continue her tirade. While I was studying, every night you were getting whisked off to art camps. While I was budgeting my allowance for a dress from the mall your aunts flew and a designer. You get a brand new car, a trip to Europe as a graduation present. And you didn't even have to apply for student loans because your precious aunts already paid for all 4 years at Stanford. Your whole life has been handed to you on a silver platter. And you still have the nerve to stand here and act like a victim because Daddy didn't give you a long enough speech. The world narrowed to the space between us. Every ounce of pain, every night spent alone in my cold room, every dismissive glance from my own father coalesced into a single point of white-hot rage. A silver platter, I asked, my voice dangerously low. That silver platter is paid for by a dead woman, you idiot. My mother. You have 3 parents who fall all over themselves to tell you how perfect you are. You have a mother who helps you with your homework and a father who cries because he's so proud of you. I have 2 loving aunts and a checkbook that tries to fill the gaping hole left by a father who wishes I'd died with my mom. Her face went pale, her jaw slack. You want my life? I took a step closer, my voice rising. You can have it. You can have the trust fund and the trips and the goddamn sapphire dress. But you also get the birthday he forgets every year. You get the holidays spent feeling like a ghost in your own home. You get to watch your father love someone else's daughter more than he could ever love you. So go on, enjoy your party, enjoy your perfect, easy life with your 3 living parents. I saw the flicker of comprehension, the momentary crack in her smug facade, but it was replaced just as quickly by her ingrained selfishness. You're just saying that to be cruel. No, I said, my voice breaking with a decade's worth of suppressed tears. I'm saying that because you're a dumb witch who can't see past her own reflection. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, yanked open the gate, and walked away, not stopping until I was safely inside my car, peeling out of the driveway and leaving my father's house behind for what felt like the last time. The drive to my aunt's estate was a blur. By the time I pulled up the long tree-lined driveway, my tears had dried into angry, salty tracks on my cheeks. The front door opened before I even reached it. Aunt Carol and Aunt June stood there, their car keys still in their hands. They'd left right after me. Neither of them said a word. Carol just opened her arms, and I fell into them, the kind of sob I hadn't allowed myself since I was a little girl, finally breaking free. They led me inside to the sitting room, put a glass of water in my hand, and just sat with me in the comforting quiet until my phone started to buzz. It was my father. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Then a text, times, call me. Now. Asterisk. Don't, Aunt June said, her voice like flint. But I had to. Some stupid masochistic part of me needed to hear what he would say. I pressed the speakerphone button, my hand trembling. Madison, what the hell is wrong with you? His voice wasn't concerned. It was furious. I couldn't speak. Do you have any idea what you've done? He demanded. You made a scene and stormed out, and now Claire is in her room bawling her eyes out. You ruined her graduation party. Asterisk, her time's graduation party. He'd said it. He'd finally just said the quiet part out loud. The lie was gone, and all that was left was the ugly, naked truth. I wasn't his daughter. I was an obligation. A nuisance who had just inconvenienced his real family. Brenda's shrill voice cut in from the background. Tell her she's a selfish, ungrateful brat. After everything we did for her, putting her name on the invitation. I pressed the red button, ending the call. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked from Aunt Carol's heartbroken face to Aunt June's cold fury. The last thread of hope, the one I didn't even know I was still clinging to, that maybe one day he'd wake up and see me snap. It was over. Okay. I said, my voice hollow. Okay. Aunt June leaned forward, her eyes sharp. No, darling. Not okay. This is the end. We're done being polite. We're done playing their game. She looked at Carol, who gave a slow, determined nod. Your mother, June, began, her tone all business now, was a very smart woman. She left you a trust. A substantial one. It was to be managed by your father, but overseen by Carol and me as executors of her estate. He couldn't touch the principal, but he had discretion over the interest it generated. I just stared, not understanding where this was going. We allowed him that discretion. Carol added softly, hoping it would encourage him to be a better father. A gesture of goodwill. The interest from that trust has been paying the mortgage on that house for the last 10 years. My breath caught in my throat. Furthermore, June continued, a grim smile touching her lips. As part of that goodwill, we verbally agreed to allow a portion of the trust's educational fund to be used for Claire's tuition at Yale. We thought it might buy you some peace. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. The pieces clicked into place, and a cold, brutal clarity washed over me. This wasn't just about love and neglect. It was about money, my mother's money. They hadn't just been ignoring me. They'd been using me. Aunt June picked up her phone from the table. I believe it's time to rescind that goodwill. All of it. She dialed her lawyer. I watched, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. David, it's June, she said, her voice crisp. I need you to draw up the paperwork immediately. We are revoking all discretionary access. Robert has to Madison's trust. Effective immediately. And I want you to send a letter to him and his wife, certified mail, informing them that our verbal offer to assist with Claire's university tuition has been withdrawn. Yes. The full amount. Let them figure out how to pay for Yale on their own. She listened for a moment, then said, Thank you, David. Send the draft to my email. She hung up and placed the phone back on the table with a soft final click. The room was still. The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. This wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't a dramatic, tearful confrontation. It was quiet. It was legal. It was absolute. I wasn't happy. I wasn't giddy with revenge. I just felt free. The weight of trying to earn a love that was never available to me finally lifted. They wanted a golden child. Fine, let them figure out how to pay for her. The 6-hour drive always gave me too much time to think. 6 hours of asphalt hypnosis, watching the white lines flicker by, my mind cycling through the same damn loop. Is she okay? Is she happy? Is she alone? It was a low humming anxiety that lived under my skin, a permanent side effect of loving someone from 300 miles away. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Sarah's picture lit up the screen, that selfie from our trip to the coast last year, the one where the wind is whipping her hair across her face, and she's got that wide, uncontainable smile. The smile that made me put a ring on her finger. I tapped the screen. Hey you. I'm about an hour out. Babe, oh my God, finally. Her voice was a little too bright, a little too loud. I can't wait. I miss you so much, it's stupid. Miss you too, I said, my grip tightening on the wheel. How's everything? How's Kevin? Oh, you know. He's Kevin, she laughed. Her brother had been a temporary fixture on my couch for 8 months now. He's fine. We're just hanging out. I was about to make dinner. Are you hungry? Starving. Good. I'll see you soon. Drive safe. I love you. Love you too. I hung up and the silence in the cab felt heavy. I love you. The words felt automatic, a script we'd been reading for 2 years. But lately the subtext was screaming at me. It started about a year in. A drunk text from one of her friends to me times. You should know what Sarah's doing when you're not around. Asterisk. When I confronted her, the tears came instantly. She's always been jealous of us. How could you even listen to that? I felt like an asshole. I dropped it. 6 months later, a rumor got back to me through a friend of a friend who knew one of her coworkers, a late night with a guy from accounting. This time she got angry. You really think I'd risk all this for some boring guy from work? I live in your apartment. Tristan. I'm wearing your ring. Have a little faith. It was a good point. I was paying for everything: the rent, the bills, her car insurance, her phone. She wasn't working. It didn't make sense. I dropped it. The third time was the one that stuck with me. It came from her ex, Mark. He'd cornered me at a bar when I was home for a weekend visit, his face tight with something that looked a lot like pity. He said she'd been calling him, texting him, telling him she was miserable. Sarah went ballistic. She claimed he was an obsessive stalker, that he couldn't accept she'd moved on and was happy. She showed me a string of texts she'd sent him telling him to leave her alone. It looked convincing. I believed her. I had to. I'd been cheated on before in a different life, with a different woman, and the paranoia had almost broken me. I swore I'd never become that guy again. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable physical proof. Without it, accusations were just poison. Pulling into my assigned spot felt like docking a ship after a long voyage. I killed the engine and just sat there for a second, gathering the energy to switch from long-haul worker to attentive fiancé. The apartment doors swung open before I even got my key in the lock. Sarah threw her arms around my neck, burying her face in my chest. You're home. I hugged her back, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. I'm home. Over her shoulder, I saw Kevin on the couch, controller in hand, eyes glued to the TV. He gave a little two-fingered wave without looking away. What's up, man? Hey, Kevin. The week was a blur of trying to feel normal. We went out to dinner, saw a movie, had lazy mornings in bed. But there was a weird energy I couldn't shake. Her phone was always face down. She'd take calls in the other room. When I asked who it was always my mom or my sister. She seemed jumpy, her eyes darting around whenever we were out in public. I told myself it was the distance. I told myself I was projecting my own insecurities onto her. I wanted to be wrong. I desperately needed to be wrong. It was Thursday night, our last night before I had to drive back to the job site for another 2-week rotation. We were on the couch, a stupid reality show playing on the TV. Kevin had gone out with some friends. For the first time all week, it felt quiet. It felt almost like us again. Sarah was curled into my side, her head on my shoulder. I hate that you have to leave tomorrow. I know, I said, stroking her hair. Me too. Maybe you could look for something closer to home soon, she asked, her voice small. We'll talk about it, I said, the same non-committal answer I always gave. That's when it happened. A sharp, confident knock on the door. Not a neighbor. Not a delivery. It was too late for that. Sarah sat bolt upright, her body rigid. Who's that? She whispered, her eyes wide. I don't know. I got up from the couch, a cold feeling creeping up my spine. Her reaction was all wrong. It wasn't curiosity. It was fear. I looked through the peephole, and my stomach dropped through the floor. It was Mark. Her ex. He stood there under the flat yellow light of the hallway. His jaw set, his gaze fixed on my door. He looked like a man on a mission. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Tristan," he said. It wasn't a question. "We need to talk." Behind me, I heard Sarah gasp. "What are you doing here?" "Get away from our apartment." "I'm calling the cops." I put a hand up to stop her, my eyes locked on Mark's. "Let him talk." "She's a liar, man," Mark said, his voice low and steady. He wasn't trying to cause a scene. He was just delivering a verdict. "She told me you two were done. She said you broke up over a month ago." "He's insane, Tristan. Don't listen to him." Sarah was frantic, trying to push past me to get to the door. I held my ground, my body a barrier between them. I looked at Mark. My voice came out flat, hollow. "I need proof." He didn't even flinch. It was like he was expecting it. "I figured you would." He reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled something out. He held it up for me to see. It was a silver necklace, a small, intricate little bird. The one I gave Sarah for our first anniversary. My blood went cold. "She left it in my truck last week." Mark said, his eyes filled with a grim sort of sympathy. "Along with this." He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small worn object. He pressed it into my palm. It was her spare key to my car. The one she swore she'd lost somewhere in the apartment months ago. The one I'd helped her search for an entire weekend. I stared at the key in my hand, then at the necklace. The pieces of the last 2 years clicked into place with sickening clarity. The drunk text, the rumors, the late-night calls. It wasn't paranoia. It was my gut screaming a warning I'd refused to hear. I looked up from the evidence, my world tilting on its axis. Mark just stood there, his face a grim mask. I could hear Sarah behind me starting to sob, the lies already forming on her lips. I closed my hand around the key, the cold metal biting into my skin. I looked at Mark. "Wait here," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't go anywhere." I stepped back inside and shut the door, leaving him in the hallway. The click of the deadbolt echoed in the sudden suffocating silence of the apartment. I turned around. Sarah was backed against the wall, her face pale, her chest heaving with panicked breaths. The truth was in the room with us now, a third person, ugly and undeniable. And it was waiting for me to speak. "He's crazy, Tristan." She stammered, hands fluttering near her face as if to ward off my expression. "He's obsessed with me. He must have stolen that stuff. You can't possibly believe him over me." I didn't say a word. I just opened my hand. The silver bird necklace lay coiled around the dull metal of my car key. Proof. Hard, undeniable physical proof. It was all I ever wanted. And now that I had it, I felt nothing but a hollow, ringing emptiness. "Where did he get the key?" "Sarah," I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I don't know. I told you I lost it." "He must have found it. He stalks me." "I told you." "Stop." The word cut through her frantic explanation like a razor. "Just stop lying." Her face crumpled. "I'm not lying." I walked past her to the door, my movements feeling slow and deliberate, like I was wading through water. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Mark was still standing there. His arms crossed, his expression unchanged. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside. Sarah recoiled as if he were radioactive. "Get out of my house," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at him. "It's not your house," I said, my voice flat. "It's my apartment. And he's not going anywhere until I get the truth." I closed the door again, trapping the three of us in the small entryway. The air was thick with betrayal. I looked from her terrified face to his grim one. "She told me you were working through the details of the breakup." Mark set his eyes on me. "Said you were being difficult about the apartment. That she needed a place to crash for a few nights while you moved your stuff out." I looked at Sarah. Her eyes were wide with panic darting between us, searching for an exit and angle, a lie that would stick. She found none. "He's twisting everything," she cried, turning her tear-filled eyes to me. "Babe, please. It's us. It's always been us. He's trying to ruin what we have." "What do we have, Sarah?" I asked, holding up the necklace again. "Because right now it looks like we have a bunch of lies and my anniversary gift that you left in his truck." The mention of the truck, the specific detail, was the final blow. Her whole body seemed to deflate. The fight went out of her, replaced by a desperate, pathetic pleading. "Okay," she whispered, tears streaming down her face now. "Okay, fine. I messed up. I was so lonely, Tristan. You're gone all the time and I got scared. I thought you were seeing someone else out there. It was stupid, I know. But I was hurt. And I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I echoed, the word tasting like poison. "Yes, just once." "It was one time," she sobbed, reaching for my arm. I flinched away from her touch. "It meant nothing. It was just a stupid, lonely mistake. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. Please, Tristan. Don't throw everything away over one mistake." I looked at Mark. He just shook his head slowly, a silent confirmation of what my gut was already screaming at me. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern. This was who she was. "No," I said. The word was small, but it felt like a mountain. "We can't fix this." I turned my back on Mark and looked directly at her. All the love I'd felt for her had curdled into disgust. I saw her for what she was, a parasite, living in my home, spending my money, all while lying to my face. "Pack your things," I said. "All of them. And tell Kevin to pack his too. I want you both out of here. Tonight." "Tristan. No. Please." She begged, grabbing the front of my shirt. "You can't do this. I have nowhere to go. I love you." I peeled her fingers off me one by one. Her touch felt like a burn. "You should have thought about that before you went to his place." "It's over, Sarah." I walked to the front door and opened it for Mark. He gave me a short, sympathetic nod and left without another word. I didn't watch him go. I just stood there holding the door open, waiting. The next hour was a symphony of hysterical sobs, slammed drawers, and pathetic pleas. I sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen, feeling nothing. I was numb. She begged, she bargained, she promised to change. She swore she would do anything. I just kept repeating the same 4 words. "Pack your things. Now." When Kevin got home, he walked into a war zone. Sarah's bags were by the door, her face a mess of swollen, tear-streaked flesh. He looked from her to me, confused. "Pack your shit, Kevin," I said, not even looking at him. "You're leaving too." He opened his mouth to argue, saw the look on my face, and wisely shut it. They were gone by midnight. The silence they left behind was deafening but clean. I walked through my apartment, and it already felt bigger, lighter. I gathered up her things, the toothbrush from the bathroom, the half-read magazine on the nightstand, the throw blanket on the couch, and stuffed them all into a trash bag. I wanted no trace of her left. A few days later, I was clearing out the small desk in the spare bedroom she'd used as her own. There was an old laptop there, one I'd bought for her when she was supposedly looking for jobs online. I was about to put it in a box with the rest of her crap when I decided to boot it up, just in case. It was still logged into her browser, still logged into her iCloud account. It was all there. A roadmap of her betrayal. Text messages synced from her phone. Not just with Mark, but with two other guys. One was the accountant from her old job. The other I didn't even recognize. There were plans, flirtations, pictures. Timestamps that stretched back over a year. Evidence that she was cheating on me during the very weeks I was driving 6 hours home to see her, to support her, to love her. Any lingering flicker of doubt, any microscopic grain of pity I might have had for her was vaporized in a blaze of cold, hard rage. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time slip. It was a lifestyle funded by me. I picked up my phone and sent her one last text. Asterisk, I found your messages. Tell Kevin to come get the rest of your things by Friday. Leave my keys. Don't ever contact me again. Asterisk. I blocked her number before she could reply. I didn't need to hear the excuses. I didn't need to hear the lies. I had the proof. I finally had it, and it had set me free. The long drive back to work wouldn't be filled with anxiety anymore. It would just be a drive. The road ahead was empty, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like my own. My therapist says I should start with the first time I felt it. The specific moment the resentment put down roots. It was the summer I turned 9. I'd saved up for months to buy a shimmering purple Schwinn with handlebar tassels. I loved that bike more than I loved anything. My brother David, who was 12, decided to see if he could ride it down the basement stairs. He couldn't. I found my beautiful bike crumpled at the bottom of the steps, the front wheel bent into a sad metal frown. I screamed. Not a cry. A raw, furious scream. My dad came running. He took one look at the bike, then at David standing at the top of the stairs with a sheepish grin, and sighed. "David, what have we told you about being careful?" he said, his voice softer than the situation warranted. "It was an accident," David mumbled, his limp more pronounced when he was in trouble. It was his go-to move. The slight drag of his right foot, a souvenir from a childhood illness, was his get-out-of-jail-free card. My dad just nodded. "Well, accidents happen." He turned to me, my face streaked with tears and rage. "It's just a bike, Elena. We can't get angry at your brother. You know he doesn't always think things through. They never bought me a new one." A month later, David got a brand new 10-speed for his birthday. To encourage him to get outside more, Mom had said, completely missing the jagged irony. That was the first lesson. There was the world, and then there were the rules for David. For 42 years, I've lived with that distinction. It's a distinction that has cost me over a decade in copays to doctor. Anya, who listens patiently while I unpack the same baggage week after week. It's the reason my husband Mark knows to just pour me a large glass of wine after any extended family function. It was always be patient with David. Don't upset David. You have to understand, Elena, things are harder for him. Harder how he had a disability, yes, but it didn't stop him from holding a steady enough job in IT, from getting married, from having a son. It didn't stop him from being careless and selfish and utterly unaccountable because mom and dad always swooped in to clean up his messes. The biggest mess was Leo. David's wife, Sarah, was a saint. She was the only one who ever saw David for exactly who he was, and she loved him anyway. When she died of a sudden aneurysm 10 years ago, Leo was only 8. David fell apart. Not in the grief-stricken "I must be strong for my son" way. In the "I can't handle this, someone else fix it" way. So my parents did. They stepped in and Leo came to live with them. They raised him. He's a great kid, 19 now, and starting college. I love him. But every time I see him in my parents' house, a part of me tightens. He's another monument to David's inability to be a grown-up and my parents' unending willingness to enable it. Another accident they cleaned up. Which is why when my mom called last Tuesday, my stomach filled with cold, heavy dread. "Hi, sweetie," she said, her voice overly bright. "Your father and I have decided. It's finally time to get our affairs in order. We've made an appointment with a lawyer, a Mr. Davies, for this Saturday. We want you and David to be there." I leaned against my kitchen counter, staring at a drawing my daughter Chloe had taped to the fridge. "Okay," I said slowly. "Oh, will you mean?" "That's right. Just to make sure everything is clear and fair. Asterisk. Fair asterisk." The word hung in the air between us. In my family, fair was a 4-letter word. It meant whatever was easiest for David. "Saturday is fine, Mom," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. "Mark and I are taking the kids to the zoo, but I can come after." "Oh, good. It's at 2. And Elena," she added, her tone shifting, becoming cautious. "Please. Let's just keep it simple. No drama. Asterisk. Don't upset David. Asterisk. The old refrain. I'm not the one who creates drama, Mom," I said, and hung up before she could reply. Saturday arrived with a low gray sky that matched my mood. I walked into my parents' house, a place that hadn't changed since I was a kid. The same smell of lemon polish and Mom's rose-scented potpourri. The same ticking grandfather clock in the hall. They were all in the living room. My dad, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered, sat in his worn leather recliner. My mom perched on the edge of the sofa, wringing her hands. David was sprawled in the armchair opposite Dad, scrolling on his phone, the picture of unbothered entitlement. And at the coffee table, a man in a stiff gray suit had a briefcase open. Mr. Davies. He had the bland, neutral face of someone paid to not have an opinion. "Elena, you're here," my mom said, relief washing over her face. "Sorry I'm late," I said, kissing her on the cheek. I nodded at my dad and shot a look at David, who grunted in acknowledgement without looking up from his screen. Typical. I sat on the sofa next to my mother. The tension was thick enough to taste. Mr. Davies cleared his throat. "All right," he began, pulling out a sheaf of papers. "If we're all ready. Your parents have expressed their wishes to me, and I've drafted a last will and testament for their review. The primary goal, as they've stated, is an equal and fair distribution of the estate." There. It was again. Asterisk fair. Asterisk. My dad shifted in his chair. "We just want to do right by everyone," he said, not looking at me. We've thought about this a lot. It's important to us that the family stays strong after we're gone. I felt a muscle in my jaw tighten. My family wasn't strong. It was a carefully constructed ecosystem built around one person's needs, and everyone else was just support staff. My own kids, Chloe and Sam, weren't even a consideration in this room. It was just about the original cast. Mr. Davies put on a pair of reading glasses. The document is quite standard, he explained. It assigns your father as executor for your mother's estate and vice versa, should one predecease the other. In the event of their passing together, it outlines the distribution of their primary assets, namely this house, and their combined savings and investment portfolio. He paused, looking over his glasses at my brother and me. My heart started to pound a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. This was it. The moment of truth. Decades of resentment of being the responsible one, the one who built her own life without a safety net, all came down to this piece of paper. I just wanted it to be simple. 50-50. Clean. Anything else was a betrayal. My mom reached over and patted my hand, her palm clammy. We think it's the best way, honey, she whispered, her eyes pleading with me. Asterisk. Don't make a scene. Please, Elena. Asterisk. Mr. Davies took a sip of water, then looked down at the document. After all debts are settled, the remaining estate, he announced, his voice clinical and final, is to be liquidated and divided into 3 equal shares. 3 equal shares. The words echoed in the stuffy living room. My brain snagged on the number. 3. There were 2 of us. 2 children. Me and David. I forced a small, tight laugh. I'm sorry, Mr. Davies. I must have misheard. Did you say 3? Mr. Davies glanced at my parents. My mother gave a weak, almost imperceptible nod. That is correct, the lawyer said. 1 share for your brother David. 1 share for you, Elena. And 1 share for your nephew Leo. My blood went cold. I looked from my mother's pleading face to my father's determined avoidance of my gaze. Leo, I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Why is Leo a primary heir? Well, honey. My mom started, her voice trembling slightly. We raised him. He's like a son to us. He has times a son, I said, pointing a thumb at David, who was finally looking up from his phone, a scowl forming on his face. And I have 2 children, Chloe and Sam. If we're including grandchildren as primary heirs, then shouldn't all 3 of them be included? Shouldn't the estate be split into 5 parts? The logic of it felt clean, undeniable, but I knew logic had no place here. Don't be ridiculous, Elena, David snapped, sitting up straighter. This has nothing to do with your kids. This is about Leo. Mom and Dad are just trying to do the right thing by him. The right thing. The cap on 40 years of swallowed anger popped off. The right thing is to treat your children equally. And if you decide to change the rules and include grandchildren, you treat them equally too. Or are Chloe and Sam just worth less? Leave it alone, David warned, his voice low. This is their business, not yours. It becomes my business when my children are being deliberately excluded. I turn to my parents. Is this what you want to send a message from beyond the grave, that one grandchild mattered more than the others because he was a mess you had to clean up? That is not fair. Elena, my dad said, his voice cracking. He looked 100 years old. Fair? I shot back, the word tasting like poison. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that my brand new bike got destroyed? And I was told to get over it because accidents happen. but a month later David got a new one. Is it fair that I've had to be the responsible one my entire life while he gets a free pass for everything? Because things are harder for him. Oh, for God's sake, you're still on about that stupid bike. David exploded, getting to his feet. The limp was more pronounced his tell. This isn't about your kids. This is about you. You've always resented me. And now you're punishing my son for it. You're punishing a kid who lost his mother because you've got some deep-seated childhood bullshit you can't get over. It's pathetic. My bullshit, I stood up to, my whole body shaking. My bullshit is that I'm sick of watching you fail upwards your entire life on the backs of our parents. Leo is with them because you couldn't handle being a father. And now you're letting them write my children out of their own family history to reward you for it. Stop it. My mother shrieked a sound I hadn't heard since I was a child. She was clutching her chest, her face pale. Both of you just stop it. My dad struggled to his feet, grabbing the arm of his recliner for support. Mr. Davies, he said, his voice raspy with effort. Change it. Just change it. 50-50. Just for Elena and David. Make this stop. The room went silent. The only sound was the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock. David stared at me, his eyes filled with a pure white-hot hatred I had never seen before. I had one. But it felt exactly like I had just burned my own house down. Mr. Davies, looking deeply uncomfortable, just nodded. As you wish. I didn't wait for him to pack up his briefcase. I grabbed my purse and walked out, the slam of the front door echoing behind me. I was barely in my car, hands trembling on the steering wheel, when my phone buzzed. It was David. I ignored it. It buzzed again. A text message. Asterisk, you're an idiot, Elena. I hope you're happy. You just blew this whole family up for a few bucks. Asterisk. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and drove. I didn't tell Mark what happened when I got home. I couldn't form the words. I just hugged Chloe and Sam so tightly they complained. Then I went into my bedroom and cried. The next few days were a wall of suffocating silence. I called my mom's cell. It went to voicemail. I sent a text. No reply. They were icing me out. David had blocked my number. The ecosystem was in shock. The support staff had staged a coup, and the king was furious. I was completely, utterly alone. On Wednesday evening, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Aunt Elena, it's Leo. My stomach dropped. Leo, hi honey. How are you? I'm fine, he said. His voice was calm, which was somehow worse than if he'd been angry. Grandma told me what happened. A long pause. Look, for what it's worth, I don't care about the money. I'm going to be fine. I wanted to say something. Okay, I whispered. My dad is a mess, you know, he's really hurt. And Grandma and Grandpa are just sad. He took a breath. I get that you have issues with my dad. I've seen it my whole life. But bringing me into it, making it about me versus your kids, it was a total Karen move, Aunt Elena. A Karen move. The phrase hit me like a physical slap. He didn't scream. He didn't curse me out. He just passed judgment cool and quiet, and in that moment he validated every dark fear I had. I hadn't fought for fairness. I had thrown a tantrum in a lawyer's office. I had used my own children as weapons in a 40-year war with my brother. I had punished a good kid for a lifetime of slights that weren't his fault. David was right. I had punished his son for my own resentment. I started, but no words came. What could I say, Times? You don't understand. It's more complicated than that, Times. It felt as weak and flimsy as David's old excuses. I just thought you should know, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Bye? He hung up. I sat there in the dark of my quiet kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear. I had finally screamed loud enough for them to hear me. This was my revenge. I had torn down the system that had made me feel small and invisible my whole life. And all I felt was the cold, hollow emptiness of the space where my family used to be.